Okay, welcome to the Land Use Board meeting of July the 6th, 2020. We will begin by saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
The Sunshine Law, pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in the entrance hall of Beach Haven Municipal Building and mailing the same to Beach Haven Times and the Asbury Park Press. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision for each individual application. Decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Mayor Davis?
Yes, here.
Mr. Cactus?
Here.
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mr. Stevens?
He's here.
He's here, right?
Jim Stevens, are you here?
Here.
Yes.
Mr. Pisano?
Here.
Mr. Metal?
Here.
Mr. Muha? He signed in.
He did?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Mr. Horensky? Mrs. Eddles?
Here.
Mr. Genna? Mr. Tinquist?
Here.
Mrs. Baxter? Mrs. Lenhard?
Yes.
Okay?
So we have Mr. Janet and Nicole Baxter are missing?
Yes.
Huh, interesting. Okay, new business, we have approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes for the June meeting?
I so approve.
A second?
Second. Tom Edel.
Mayor Davis?
Nancy?
She's
You're
muted.
muted. Unmute yourself, Nancy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I heard nothing. What's going on?
We're approving the minutes of the meeting, and she's doing roll call.
I did roll call. I got that, and I did read the minutes, and yes, I approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Mr. Cactus?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Pisano?
Yes.
Mr. Metal?
Yes.
Mr. Muha?
Yes.
Scott, are you here now?
I don't see Scott.
Okay, he signed in. Mrs. Eddles?
Yes.
Mr. Tinquist?
Yeah.
And Mrs. Lenhard?
Yes.
Okay.
Is Nicole and Mr. Jenna still have not signed in?
No, they have not. Scott is somewhere on here though.
But Scott is here, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next on the agenda is the approval of the bills. Do I have a motion to approve the bills?
I make a motion to approve the bills. Don Caxton.
A second?
Second. Tom Edel.
Mayor Davis?
Nance?
Can you hear us, Nancy?
Nancy,
I can't hear anything.
can you hear
Can
Nance?
you hear us?
I don't know what happened. Every once in a while, I hear nothing.
Are you, don't mute yourself at all.
I'm not muted.
Okay.
I just couldn't hear anybody else. Are we voting on the bills? Yes, I vote.
Yes, we're voting on the bills. You were the first one called.
Yeah, I
Okay.
couldn't hear you. Yes, I approve.
Mr. Cactus?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Pisano?
Yes.
Mr. Metal?
Yes.
Mr. Muha?
Yes.
Mr. Horensky? Mrs. Eddles,
Yes.
Mr. Tinquist,
Yes.
Mrs. Lenhard.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, moving right along, we have some announcements. The Coffee Nest at 106 North Bay Avenue has been approved to change the menu to freshly prepared food and outdoor seating only. Next year, if they want to have people inside, they have to come back and apply for a seating site plan for inside, but now they're only approved for outside. DK Brooklyn Incorporated at Schooners Wharf has been approved to open a cart to sell cell phone accessories. And the Seabreeze Realty has been approved to move to a storefront in Victoria Rose Condominiums, which is located at 510 North Bay Avenue. Now on to old business. The application for 2018-09, the Victoria Rose Condominiums, 510 North Bay Avenue, Block 167, Lot 1. I will allow Stu to explain this to the board. Stu?
Yes, can you hear me?
I don't think that, can you hear
Can
everybody?
you hear me?
That's
You
better.
can, if you can just talk a little louder, Stu, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
I just had it in front of me. We were, this matter was remanded by the court, the appellate division. They affirmed part of the actions of the law division, and I sent everybody a copy of the opinion from the appellate division and copies of the transcripts. And referencing the opinion of the appellate division, the court basically is requiring the board to vote, a full board to vote on this application. And if any members were not present or members of the board at the time, they were to review the transcripts and give a certification to before participating. So I had spoken to Colleen, and apparently we have 9 board members who have all either,
Speak up, Stu.
I'm sorry, we have 9 board members who have either attended the meetings or alternatively have reviewed the transcripts and certified that by providing Colleen with a written certification that they can participate in this particular vote. As I read the decision, and I stand by that, it's very clear and unambiguous. The court is remanding this matter for the board to deliberate, and re-vote, with those who have not done so reading the transcript or listening to the tape of any meeting or meetings they may have missed, providing their certification and then deliberating and voting on the application as well. And they cited a case that stands for that proposition. Our decision does not bind any board members to repeat the vote they cast before, nor do we intimidate any views on the substantive propriety of the outcome. So basically, the board is to deliberate on the application as it was presented to us, and then cast a vote, a motion to either approve or deny the site plan application. What the board is responding to is an application for site plan for the Victoria Rose, which is under docket number 2018-09 SP. At that time, I asked that the application be posted, that the board members have an opportunity to review the application, the plans, review the letters issued by our board engineer, and review the transcripts are all provided to you as well if you wanted to refresh your recollection on what effectively was testified to by members of the public as well as the applicant and the applicant's experts. So that's where we are now. There's nothing in that order that requires or requests or suggests that this matter be reopened for public comment or reopen the record. I'll represent that I did not get it directly. I was shown as copied. I did receive a letter from a Mr. Lambert raising some issues. Those issues can be dealt with through the construction official if in fact the application is approved. If the application is not approved, any comments that people may have may be moot. And that would leave this matter open to additional action. Right now, we're asked to vote on the application, and you're not bound by your prior votes. So Bonnie, I would think that you may want to start the
Right.
deliberation with the board members.
Correct.
And I think we should ask Colleen who is here and who is going to vote on this evening. That should be the
Everybody
first order of
is
business.
now here, the 9 regular board members. Scott, can you hear me?
Is he unmuted? Can you tell if he's unmuted?
I see his screen. I just don't see him like connected by any
Scott's,
of the audio.
I see him now. Scott, can you hear us? He's talking and we can't hear him. He's on an iPad. He says he's connecting to audio.
Okay.
Maybe it'll take a minute. Okay, unmute him now, Colleen. Can you
I'm sorry.
unmute?
I can. I'm just trying to find him. I'm sorry.
Oh. Because he's on,
Yeah,
but
I
he's,
can see him.
but he's muted.
How
Scott,
about
can
now?
you hear?
Yes?
Okay.
Yes, now I can hear him.
Okay.
Scott, did you hear Stu?
Yes, I did. I heard everything.
So if anybody on the board has any comments to make about the Victoria Rose application, do it now. If you have any questions, ask them now before we vote. Is there anybody that has a question, concerned about it? Does it meet your site plan, the redevelopment plan?
That's the redevelopment plan. It's the site plan that we voted on. The
Right.
redevelopment plan had previously been
There
approved.
were no variances for this application, as I remember.
There were no variances requested. There were some questions raised, but our engineer at the time indicated that there were no variances required. And I think Ms. Givens, the redevelopment attorney, also indicated that there were no variances required under the application.
Okay. No questions? You ready to vote?
I have a question. I don't
Okay.
believe I voted on the original. Does that preclude me from voting here, or am I in because this is a revote?
No, everybody is qualified to vote, Scott. I read that early on and I sent that. If you take a look at the
Okay.
court order, it basically said that the members, whether they were members at the time, or even if they weren't members at the time, if they either were present as members, or if they weren't members and they listened to all of the transcript of the transcripts or read the transcripts or listened to the tapes and provided a certification, you're eligible to vote. So
Okay.
that's why I think what we should do, Bonnie, is let's have Colleen tell us who's eligible to vote.
Exactly,
Because I
that's
think
what
she
I was
did.
going to do, Stu. Colleen, read the
receive-
list of the people that will be voting tonight.
And just comment, Colleen, that if you receive certifications that they reviewed any transcripts of meetings they may have missed.
Okay. It would be Mayor Davis, Mr. Cactus, Mr. Allen, Mr. Stevens, I received certification. Mr. Brazano, I received certification. Mr. Metal, Mr. Muha, missed one meeting, I have certification from him. Mr. Herensky, I also have a certification from him, and Mrs. Lenhard.
So Mrs. Eddles, who voted on the original and is not voting because she's first alternate.
Yes, from what I understood, it was just the 9 members. But
Okay.
other than that, Mrs. Eddles has, was there for all previous meetings, and Mr. Tinquist also filled out a certification form as well.
Okay, but they will not be voting tonight.
No.
Okay. Does everybody understand that? Any
Yeah.
questions on that? Okay, can I have a motion to approve this application?
I make a motion to approve the application, Don Caxis.
Can I have a
Second.
second?
Second, Joe.
Joe Pisano, second.
Thank you. Mayor Davis,
Yes,
Mr. Cactus,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Not changing my vote. I stand by what I said originally. it's in the transcripts that I read tonight before the meeting. And I stand by it. I never was in favor of this project from the start, and still not, so no.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Pisano,
Yes.
Mr. Meadow,
I originally voted no as well. And I don't think the project meets all of the qualifications that we need for the town as far as loading and unloading, loading zones and stuff like that for the businesses. So I'm staying with no.
okay. Mr. Muha,
I've had concerns in the beginning with this project. I voted no. I still strongly vote no, and hope that some of the construction issues that may or may not have come to light or addressed, my vote is no.
thank you. Mr. Horensky,
No.
Mrs. Lenhard,
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5-4. The motion passed, the application passes. All right, next on the agenda are the resolutions. The first one is 2020-10, which is the Gyro Heaven. I was not here for the last meeting, so I can't vote on any of these resolutions. Does anybody, did you read the resolutions, have any questions?
That came late, but I have I just wanted to raise something to the board because that resolution can be adjusted this evening. There were two items that I know we discussed at the meeting. One was initially the applicant was not inclined to provide public restrooms. Then there was some discussion, and I understand, I think, I just need a confirmation from the board that he indicated that he could make the public restrooms available, and he would, and I made that a condition. The other item is, according to my notes in the application, his hours of operation were 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Colleen's notes indicated that he may have said 11 p.m. So whatever the board recalls, I can change the resolution for those two items. Whether or not, I know Nicole spoke at the prior meeting about the public bathrooms and indicated that if you're having a restaurant, you should, she was in favor of that, and he did have it. And the applicant did say he can make an accommodation by access through the back of the store, if I'm not mistaken. But that's something the board can discuss, and however you want to resolve it, we can handle that. But other than that, it was approved. I had it for 14 seats inside. There's discussions now about outside seating, but I don't think outside seating was part of his approval. The outside seating would be post-approval, and like any other restaurant or food establishment, they would have to take whatever action they take to get their permission for that.
Stu, I have a question. What if he has inside seating? He's not just a takeout restaurant. So are there different qualifications for if you have inside seating as opposed to you're a restaurant making food and people just walk in and pick up the food and don't sit down and eat in it?
I don't know. I would think that our parking is what Jenny, this applicant had parking, and I don't think parking was an issue. But
Right.
also, the indication was it was going to be a takeout restaurant is how he described it. And he
Correct.
was not going to have any waiter or waitress service inside. He was providing a place for them to eat. However, he was not going to be serving them other than from the counter. So it would be similar to like a fast food.
So if you have a restaurant and you have tables for them to sit, but you don't have waitresses, then you're just considered a takeout.
No, I think you're still considered a restaurant. And now Frank, maybe Frank could,
Well,
as
there's
our
really
planner.
no parking requirement for seating. So it's 1 for 600. I'm not sure exactly how seating's working currently with what's going on out there. But, I mean, basically he indicated takeout, and I think he had some chairs in there, if I'm not mistaken.
He had a counter and he had a couple tables.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions about this resolution? Any other comments?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If the town imposes, and this isn't about this per se, but it's about all. If the town imposes a curfew, does that automatically curtail their operating hours?
You mean a curfew on what? Kids or anybody or what?
A COVID-related curfew would, you know, being out and established being open at a point in time.
Yes. Yes, they would have to apply to the executive order that's currently in place, which is 10 p.m. service shutdown.
Okay.
Okay.
So my question also, I'm going to go back to that because I know Colleen indicated she thought it was 11, but everything I had was 10. So I don't know what the board remembers from that from last month. The written application that came in was for 10 o'clock. So if that's where we are, we may be best just to leave it at 10 o'clock and let them expand after COVID. Or alternatively, leave it at 11 and put in the resolution subject to all COVID restrictions.
Well, who brought up 11 if he applied for 10?
Well, he may have said it during the application, you know, in the hearing, the applicant, that's what I was trying to get clarification on.
When I did the minutes in the recording, he said 11.
Okay.
Oh, he did, okay.
If I may, the COVID restrictions supersede everything else right now. So you could approve it for 11, and with the COVID restrictions, he will be bound by 10 until after this is over, then he can go to 11.
But I think what I'd like to do, Tom, if that's the case, I'm going to just put that in as just another whereas subject to COVID restrictions while they're in effect, so there's no question or confusion.
Makes good sense.
I have a question for Tom. Tom, the Executive Order 109 actually suggested that they close, but said that restaurants can maintain their normal hours of operation. Is there a new executive order that supersedes 109?
Yes, the executive order that the borough put in place for the emergency management. We did it last week.
Okay.
It was last Thursday. If you don't have a copy, I would be happy to get a copy for you. It was sent out in a nixle.
Your word's good enough for me.
All righty, are we ready to vote on this resolution?
I make a motion.
Yes.
Who motion?
Second.
Who's first?
I make a motion to pass the resolution, Don Caxis.
My second.
Is that with the bathroom, Don?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Just for the board, if you can say your name when you motion, because when you all talk at the same time, it cuts you all out and I can't really hear. So I have Don for first motion, and who was second?
Scott. Horensky.
Thank you. Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Cactus,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Pisano,
Yes.
Mr. Metal,
Yes.
Mr. Muha,
Yes.
and Mr. Horensky.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, the next resolution is 2020-05, which is Patrick and Margaret Damiani, or Polly's Dock. Any
That
issues
resolution
with
was
that?
it was 2005 seating. They came in, they bifurcated the application they wanted an additional 17 seats. At the last meeting, it was determined that they could not meet the fire marshal's requirements. They amended their application to 49 seats instead of 44. However, they have to, the board approved it subject to a revised plan and verification that they can meet the 36-inch aisle width. And the requirements of the 36-inch aisle width under the fire code is you start at 19 inches from the end of the table is where you start measuring. And that aisle width there can't be any obstructions within that aisle width. So we gave them the approval, but it's subject to fire marshal acceptance and compliance with the fire code. So also in that particular resolution, I noted that there's certain social distancing requirements, and they would have to adhere to those which supersede any approvals that we would give under the various federal and state executive orders as far as feeding, whether it be outside or inside in a in a gathering. So that's what the resolution does. It's very limited to the extra 5 seats, subject to the fire marshal and our borough engineer's approval. I don't know if Frank has anything else on that, but I think that's where the resolution is.
You're correct, Stu, and we have not seen a revised plan yet either for the board to sign off on.
So my question is, if you haven't seen the revised plan, is it up to enforcement to make sure they're doing that until you get a revised plan?
I would say yes.
So
But-
this is
but here's the
enforcement.
problem.
You're here.
They're
They
not
should-
approved until we
They're
get
not
the revised plan.
Right.
I made the revised plan a trigger for their approval.
That's
Correct.
So, right,
I
so
understand that.
that's where we stand with that.
But in the meantime of the meeting where it was decided and tonight's meeting or whatever meeting that you get the revised plan, what happens in the meantime?
Well, let me say this. They're currently approved for, I think, 41 seats, right? Or 40.
Right.
So if they
Yeah.
operate with the,
44 seats.
yeah, if they
44.
operate with what they currently have, they don't have to send us a revised plan. But if they want the
But
40
they have to be
seats-
36 inches apart.
Yeah, but I'm saying currently, I don't know how the prior approval impacts the new approval. The new approval requires a revised plan for 49 seats.
Okay.
If they continue to operate under their old approval, we don't really have anything on that.
But
Okay.
isn't everybody bound now by the, and I'll look to Tom because he's the only one I know in the actual enforcement. Aren't there executive orders telling people how they can limit the placement of their seating? They're limited to outside seating and the placement to meet certain social distancing requirements. Isn't that subject to the municipality to govern?
That is correct. That's usually how everything's been. It's the 6-foot rule. Health department has come in and checked different places to verify and make sure that they're doing this properly. So
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
can I ask a question?
Sure.
In this resolution, I'm reading through it. I'm trying to remember which one brought up the parking of the boats on which side. Was that the second?
North side.
Yeah, he wasn't supposed to park anything on the north side, right?
Correct.
Was that on this part of the bifurcation or is it on the other part of the bifurcation?
That was on,
Because
that's
one
why
was-
we adopted, Tom. We're readopting the prior resolution. In the prior resolution, we just approved as a board. We didn't get into the north side or south side. We approved the plan that was before us. The plan that was before us did not have any slips laid out on the north side. The only slips that we approved were those which were on the site plan that was before us. So that's, I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out which of so I'm trying to figure out which bifurcation we're on. We're on A
We're
for
just on the
the
seats.
slip approval or just the seats, because the seats was the second part, right? Or was that
Right.
the first part? I'm
Right.
confused.
Right. The seats were the second part.
The slip approval was resolved, that was memorialized last month.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I just want to double check because I understand there was some issue with parking, not adhering to the site plan that we give them.
You mean parking for boats, not cars?
Parking for boats, yes. Parking in unapproved slip spaces.
Well, that's code enforcement, isn't it?
That's what we're trying to figure out. If we set stuff up as far as land use board goes,
Right.
and we don't have any teeth to enforce these things, what is the sense of us doing this?
Well, you do it
Correct.
because there's other enforcement bodies. The land use board does not have any enforcement, nor does the zoning boards, nor the planning boards do not have enforcement. You lay out what the terms and conditions are of the approval, but there's other bodies within either the municipality or the state that attend to any of the enforcement process.
So that is my point, is the fact that Mr. Little asked Mrs. Damiani and Mr. Damiani if their site plan, what they put out was complete, and they said it was, and that they weren't gonna, and we said that they weren't gonna be allowed to have anyone park on the north side, but yet they're doing that. So when you put it in a resolution that you're gonna do A, B, and C, and they're throwing D at it, I know that's not ours, but we set the rules. how do we enforce that? We don't actually have an effective resolution or ordinance against such things. This is something that needs to be fixed. And
Hey,
this is
Tom,
not the venue to do it.
Tom, it's Frank Little. In any
Hi, Frank.
town I'm involved in, code enforcement, I believe, enforces these resolutions. I just had another one, a client of mine, an older client of mine, 10 years ago, was supposed to put a planted buffer in. He let all the plants die, and the code enforcement in that town enforced it, started giving him summonses, fines, and made him replant everything to comply with his resolution. So there has to be a mechanism through the borough governing body, and I believe it's code enforcement, to enforce these resolutions that the board approves. So I had a conversation with Sherry Mason today, and she's talking to the municipal attorney about this, but anywhere else I've been, it's code enforcement enforcing these. So we'll get to the bottom of it, but it'll be, I think, through the borough attorney and the borough manager.
Yeah, I've
So
never
my
felt
point,
that it was land use's job to enforce these things. We agree and make these resolutions, and then it goes on down the line to somebody else to enforce them, just like any ordinance.
that is correct. But if they're not adhering to the rules that we've set forth already,
Well, then fine them.
They have to get code enforcement involved.
Yeah, I mean, we can't do it. Have code enforcement fine them until they start doing what they're supposed to do.
This is Don Cack. I got a question.
Yes, Tom.
It's been a month and they haven't submitted the revised plans or anything to Frank or to the health department. I have a real problem passing a resolution when they haven't done anything in the last 30 days that they promised to do.
Well, that was my question, but Frank has an answer for that.
Well, we need to pass the resolution because there's conditions that a revised plan is required. And we need to have something for me to review and approve a revised plan. You know, we didn't have anything where we said they needed the revised plan before the resolution. It's a condition of them being allowed to use the number of seats that they proposed and was approved by the board.
Okay,
I know it's catch 22, but that's the only way to do it.
okay, thanks,
cart
Frank.
before the horse.
Right. I just wonder if even after we pass the resolution, if we pass it, that they're going to do what they're been asked to do.
Well, back to that, if they're going to give us a revised plan, barring the COVID virus, then they're not allowed to have any more than the seating they were previously approved for. And code enforcement will have to look and make that determination and give them a fine or whatever.
But like with any other, notwithstanding what they already had, I mean, if there's rules and regulations that people have to follow, they should be enforced anyway. I mean, the county fire marshal sets standards, and I think everybody is responsible for them. You can't approve an application for a gathering spot, and the codes are such. That's health and safety. So I think, notwithstanding what they have, that the fire marshal could inspect and bring them into compliance. But that's as to the seating. And that would be any restaurant.
All right, any other comments? All right, can I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve Don Caxtis.
Second?
I'll second Joe Pisano.
Mayor Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Cactus,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Pisano,
Yes.
Mr. Meadow,
No,
Mr. Muha,
Yes.
Mr. Herensky.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, resolution 2020-07, 434 Iroquois Avenue, Henry and Carrie Kane.
That's the folks, they're on the bayfront, they're renovating their house, they're moving some stairs. The neighbors they're surrounded by, they have neighbors on the on the west and neighbors to the south. They both came forward. Another member of the public came forward. Everyone thought that the plan benefited the neighborhood. They are going up to increasing their building coverage to 41%, if I'm not mistaken. But you have to realize that the lot is surrounded by water, and it's also encumbered by a 15-foot access easement. So the board found that the applicant proved its case for a variance, and they submitted architectural plans, and the plans as submitted seemed to satisfy the board and the adjoining property owners, and would be an upgrade to the neighborhood. So that's what the resolution says.
Any comments? I was not here for that application, so I have no comments or questions on it. All right, can I have a motion to approve this resolution?
Tom Metal, I'll make a motion to approve.
Ken Muhai,
Mayor Davis,
Yes,
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Pisano,
Yes.
Mr. Metal,
Yes.
Mr. Muha,
yes.
Mr. Ferensky,
Yes.
Mrs. Eddles.
Yes.
It's approved.
Yes. All right, moving along, our first application tonight, 2020-08, Kilroy Management LLC. I'm going to be recusing myself from this because we're right next door to them. Ken, you want to take over and run this
Sure.
application?
I think Nancy and I have to step down as well.
That is a use
Right.
variance. That's correct.
Nancy and Dan have to step down.
Bonnie, we have, and is Frank available? We have one other application after this. I think Puglia.
Two more.
two more.
Who else do we have?
We have the chicken or the egg, and we have the elevator. on
The elevator is the Puglia application. Is that a use variance?
Yes.
Yes, that's a D.
It is. I thought the height was
No,
lowered,
it
so
is.
it wasn't more than 10%.
Nancy can't vote on that one.
Hold on, I don't remember. Is that,
The height is like about 9 inches. But there were two aspects of that I thought that I couldn't vote on, not just the height, but there was another one.
the floor
Two,
area rate, the floor area ratio.
Percentage.
Or
Okay,
Yeah.
if that goes over, then Nancy can't vote because the
Yeah.
height I thought was satisfied because they brought the height down. Thank you.
It's the
Right,
floor
but the
area.
floor ratio, I
Right.
Right,
think.
so Nancy, you can't vote on these last two.
That's
And
right.
then I gather the chicken or the egg is Mr. Shin is going to handle that. And I don't know if that's a use variance or not.
I think it is.
I don't think so. I thought that was just.
Yeah, the
a
chicken
site
or
No,
the-
plan.
it's not.
Is
All right,
it-
let's get going with Woohoo application, the Kilroys.
Okay, thank you.
Stu, as I recall, in the last meeting, the Kilroys were going to meet with their neighbor. I believe that's one of the things we had talked about. Do we know if that has happened?
Well, I
Did
don't
they
know.
work that out?
The neighbor came forward and raised certain issues. And there were some questions regarding the use of the property. And there was also some issues raised regarding the
parking
the
spots.
parking. Well, the street parking that's being forfeited to provide on-site parking. And notwithstanding that, the Kilroys asked the matter to be carried to give themselves an opportunity to revisit the plan and take into consideration that which the neighbor said. So what happened, what we did do is we carried the application and we received a revised set of plans from Mr. Rabin's office. I have a revised set of elevations from the architect. And we also received a revised site plan from Horn, Tyson and Yoder. And we received a supplemental letter from our engineer. So at this point, I think before I enter anything into evidence, which I will do, I think we should have Mr. Rabin enter his appearance, see if there's any other documents that he wants to introduce, and then we will move forward with the hearing. Everybody in the board, I would hope, has gotten a copy of Frank's letter. It was dated June 29th. So why don't we move forward along those lines, and then we'll mark these other documents into evidence. Is that good, Ken?
Okay, Jim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
Jim Rabin.
Oh,
Need to unmute him. There he is. Okay, Jim.
Good evening, James Raven on behalf of the applicant, Kilroy Management LLC.
Mr. Rabin, sorry, at this point, we received two sets of, you received Mr. Little's letter?
Yes, I did.
All right, so the first thing we'll do is we'll swear Mr. Little in. Frank, you certify the testimony you give to know will be true and accurate.
Yes.
All right, we have a letter dated June 29th, 2020 on this application. We're going to enter that into evidence as Exhibit B2. We also received from the applicant revised plans. We have the plan from Horn Tyson and Yoder. Site plan lots 2 and 15, block 134. The revision date on these plans are June 23rd, 2020, where they flipped the duplex entry stairs to the west side of the building. So that'll be Exhibit A. Let me just look and see where we are. I'm sorry.
I have it as A5.
A5?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be Exhibit A5. And that's today's date. And we have a set of architectural plans prepared by Handline Architect under signature and seal of, that's Mr. Easterly. And that will be Exhibit A6. And those plans have looks like there's 6 sheets, is that correct? Six sheets. All right, that's A6. All right, Mr. Raven.
Thank you. As Mr. Snyder noted at the last meeting, Mr. Bogdan, who lives next door at lot 14, raised some concerns regarding the deliveries to the restaurant. While the Woohoo restaurant was not actually, there's no proposed changes to that building. We're only looking to raise and renovate the duplex building. Mr. Bogdan lives next door to that and advised that it's been the practice of the restaurant that deliveries are conducted along the easterly side of that duplex to the rear of the Woohoo. And his concern with the proposed plan at the last meeting was that deliveries would continue along that easterly side if the driveway was permitted there. And he also thought delivery trucks may park within that driveway. So we discussed a couple options at the last meeting, one of which was to potentially even eliminate the driveway and just have all on-street parking. But Mr. Stevens did make a note at the end of the last meeting that the off-street parking would be preferred as part of the plan. So what the applicant has done to revise the plan is the driveway has been widened. Mr. Essere, the architect, changed the layout of the home. So now the entry stairs are located on the westerly side of the property. and that enables the driveway to be widened. Now it can adequately fit 4 cars in the driveway. And there's also the surface of the driveway has been converted to impervious pavers, thereby reducing the overall impervious coverage for the application. And a proposed fence is also located on the plan on the northerly side of the driveway, which will prevent deliveries from being able to go along that easterly side of the property. And Mr. Esseray also on his architectural drawings listed a proposed delivery route. So the intention with the revised plan is for all deliveries to be conducted along the westerly side of the duplex. And then there's an entryway that's proposed that goes in between the duplex building and the Woohoo with sufficient clearance for delivery drivers to go underneath and conduct deliveries that way. So the applicant did what they could to try to address Mr. Bogdan's concerns, and we believe that we addressed those to the best of our ability. So that's the overview. I think I'll have Jim Brzezowski testify first, just to testify regarding how his plan has changed as a result of the changes that were made.
Mr. Brzezowski, you certify the testimony you give tonight will be true and accurate. Is he there? Jim?
Here.
Did you hear me?
Okay. You're telling the truth tonight, Jim?
Yes, I am.
All right, state your name, please.
James Brzezowski, I'm a licensed professional engineer and professional planner in the state of New Jersey. And
Mr. Brzezowski is qualified before on this application and others.
Thank you. So, Mr. Brzezowski, since the last meeting, there were revisions that were made to your plan and submitted to the board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And would you please explain to the board what those new revisions are?
Sure. Basically, following the architectural plan of Handline Architects, we flipped the entry stairs from the east side of the building to the west side of the building, which allowed us to provide the 4 adequately sized parking spaces on the east side of the building. We've also incorporated a fence along the northerly edge of those 4 residential parking spaces, and provided pervious pavers as the surface for those parking spaces. And that's basically all we did to change the plan.
What is the resulting impervious coverage now?
The impervious coverage is existing at 72.6%. It's increasing by 63.3% due to the new entryway to the building. So it increases to 73.3%, where 60% maximum is permitted. We still need a variance to allow 73.3%. An additional 8.2% is the pervious pavers. So the total of pervious pavers plus impervious surfaces is 81.5%, where 75% is the maximum permitted.
Okay, and previously, the proposed impervious coverage was 80.8%, and none of that included pervious pavers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we've improved the impervious coverage since the prior application, since the prior hearing.
Yes.
Okay. I believe those are all the changes to Mr. Brzezowski's plan. Are there questions from the board?
Does anybody in the board have questions for Jim?
This is Don Cax. I have one question regarding the fence. I assume there will be no gate in that fence?
Will's plan shows a gate. I mean,
if we're gonna, I prefer not to have a gate because otherwise it's just gonna go and make deliveries on that right side again.
Sure.
So either a solid fence or a fence with no gate.
Jim Raven,
Yes.
do the applicants have an issue with that?
Yeah, why don't we swear the applicant in again?
Sure.
Mr. Kilroy, do you certify the testimony you give will be true and accurate?
I do.
Say your name, please.
Chuck Kilroy, K-I-L-R-O-Y.
Thank you, Mr. Kilroy. Go ahead, Mr. Raven.
Mr. Kilroy, Mr. Caxis just raised an issue regarding the proposed fence on the northerly side of the driveway. Do you have any issue with that being a solid fence with no gate on that?
Well, how would, I guess I'm not understanding, how would cars park there if it was a solid gate?
This is in front of where the cars would park. So the northerly side of the driveway, basically the idea would be to prevent deliveries from being able to be conducted along that north side. So
Yeah, we've actually, and it wasn't mentioned in the previous testimony there. It wasn't mentioned that the delivery route was completely changed. It goes behind the building now.
right, I understand that. The concern is that they don't want deliveries to start being conducted on that easterly side again. And one of the ways they were looking to prevent that was having a gate, or just having a fence on that side. And I suppose if you did have a gate there, if there was a reason you wanted to have a gate, you could, lock it so that it couldn't be used during delivery times.
I mean, I'm having trouble visualizing it, but I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Well, I have a question. There's a shed behind this fence. Is that used for the restaurant? There looks to be a shed and a cooler that's set in the back
Yes,
area.
that would be the restaurant. That's a separate.
So you don't need that area for the
No.
house?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Scott. I've got a question. If there's cars parked in a driveway, wouldn't that automatically preclude delivery access through that driveway?
Yes, it would. I just think there could be times where the driveway could be vacant, where there's no cars parked there. And the board was concerned, Mr. Bogdan was concerned of deliveries going through there. But if there are cars, certainly the delivery drivers, the delivery persons would not be able to get through there. But the Kilroy seemed to be amenable to the proposed fence there, which would eliminate any possibility of deliveries on the east side.
Right.
I wouldn't.
And
This is
do
Tom
we have any
Meadow.
other questions?
Yeah, I do. I just have a statement to make. Tom Metal. I kind of actually disagree with you, Don. I appreciate the thought process, but I think if the Kilroys are saying that they will not entertain deliveries on that side of the house, why don't we take them at their word, and then let's use code enforcement to enforce it if we have to, rather than cause them not being able to use their property. Because it is a house, they're going to live there upstairs and downstairs. So that little side yard that they have could be a functioning yard for them.
This is Will, the architect. I'd also like to speak to that if possible.
Sure, go ahead.
The AC compressor will be located behind that gate, and the access to underneath for maintenance. So if we have an issue and an HVAC contractor has to get there, they're going to have to walk all the way around the building. It's just a lot of extra work to travel around the entire building just to get to that AC platform, or things of that nature if something's broken. It would just be beneficial if, even if they propose to put a lock on the gate, except for when needed.
Yeah.
Maybe a 30-inch wide pedestrian gate with a lock is fine, but not a 4-foot or 5-foot wide gate.
That would be fair.
10, 9, 10, 11.
Is that somebody asking a question?
It hasn't been.
Let me send it to you. I don't want to.
Scott, you're live.
Yeah, I just muted him.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
Hey, I have one comment, and the architect's plan shows the path under the building. And I think we need to have that same path indicated on the site plan that Jim Brzezowski prepared. Because right now, when you look at the site plan, you see the footprint of the building, and you'd have to go to the architectural plan to see the path where the deliveries have to occur underneath the building. And the site plan is what we're going to sign off on. And that path needs to be indicated on that plan also.
I agree. At this point, if the board doesn't have any more questions, we'd like to open it up to the public.
Make a motion, open to the public.
Second. Okay. It's open to the public for comment.
Does anybody from the public have a comment on this application? If you give public comment this evening, can you please turn on your camera so we can see who's talking? William, your hand is raised. I'm sorry, you don't have a last name.
Go
Go ahead, William. You can talk.
Sir, do you certify the testimony you give tonight will be true and accurate?
Yeah, it's Bill Burris. I'm just trying to figure out how to open my video.
On the bottom of your
Come in
screen, it should say
incognito.
start and stop video.
Yeah, it's not coming up, but I just had one question. Is this house subject to HPAC approval?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be a condition of any approval that they receive?
It's already been approved.
And it's not been changed?
I think it might have to go back to the HPAC because the stairs have been
Stairs
switched to the other side of the home. And then you also introduced pavers into it. So I think it would have to go back into the HPAC.
That was my only question.
We see you now, Bill. Thank you.
And Colleen, I believe you said at the last meeting that they may not have to go for a formal meeting, the regularly scheduled meeting. It could be done in a more informal process. Is that correct?
I said that about the pavers. I'm not sure what the HPAC would prefer since you are changing the whole front of it, switching the stairs over.
Right.
So I don't want to speak for their preference.
Sure. We'll do obviously whatever's required.
Okay.
Colleen, is there anybody else from the public that you see there for comment?
Jeanette, did you want to talk?
Can I unmute her?
She's on mute.
I can't hear you, Jeanette.
You have to unmute yourself.
I can unmute you, Jeanette, but on your bottom,
I unmuted.
There you go.
She's good.
Okay, yes, they changed the look of the whole entire house in the front, and so they have to come back to HVAC. We did this house 4 months ago, and it was quite difficult because we had to make changes and everything. So now they just did all that, and now they have to come back. The stairs are different, the front is different as far as the pavers and everything. So we would feel more comfortable if, you know, they could come back to us and we would require it and demand it.
I think Mr. Raven said we would be coming back.
Okay, then that would make all of us happy.
Anybody else have any?
Anybody else?
Oh my God.
If
Okay,
no,
I think that's it.
okay. At this point, we'll close the public comments. Do we have a motion to approve application 202008?
I'll make a motion to approve. This is Joe, but it has to be conditional based on the issues discussed by the board and HPAC.
I'll second
That
that.
would be subject to HPAC reapproval, approval. Also subject to the modification of the site plan to conform to the site plan to conform to the
Architectural drawing.
And any fence on the 30-inch fence with a gate, with a lock.
30-inch gate on the
36.
With lock. What is that? Is that 30 or 36? You tell me. What size gates do they have?
Make it 36.
What, 36? 36-inch gate with lock. All right.
Colleen, you want to take the vote?
Mr. Cactus?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Where'd he go?
Yes.
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 Mr. Pisano?
Yes.
Mr. Metal?
Yes.
Mr. Muha?
Yes.
Mr. Herensky?
Yes.
And Mrs. Eddles?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Bonnie, you're back.
I'm back. All right, moving right along, application 2020-11, Wello, 14th, 12th Street. They're seeking a variance relief for an elevator. Jim?
Yes. Hi, James Raven on behalf of the applicant, Rich and Kim Pulio.
Give me a moment, please.
So am I to understand that Ant and I are stepping down on this one too?
You have to step down on that, Danny, because their floor area ratio is a density variance.
Okay.
Initially, I thought they addressed the use variance because the height was brought down, but it exceeds, but it doesn't meet the D variance level. But because of the floor area ratio, I think I know you cannot participate, you and Nancy.
Okay.
At this point, Mr. Raven, what I'd like to do is, Mr. Little, do you certify the testimony you give will be true and accurate?
I do.
Okay. State your name, please.
Frank Little.
Mr. Raven, any objection?
No objection.
All right, we're going to take the June 29th, 2020 letter, and we're going to enter that into evidence known as B1. We have the application submitted by Mr. and Mrs. Pulio. It is signed. It is dated June 9th, 2020. That's going to be Exhibit A1. We have a plan prepared by Landline Surveyors. It's called Plot Plan. That'll be Exhibit A2. It does have a zoning map associated with it. And then we have a set of plans. Just so I'm square, Mr. Raven. We have a set of plans prepared by Coastal Design. The plans prepared by Coastal Design are dated May 27th, 2020. And it looks like there's sheet A1 and A2. Now, I received from you before I enter those into evidence, are there revised plans as well?
Yeah, the only thing I submitted an electronic copy. The hard copies were not revised. In the hard copies that were submitted, the photographs on sheet A2, photographs 3 and 4 were inadvertently flipped. So on the electronic revised set that I sent, it was corrected. So
I'm going to enter this into evidence as the Coastal Design plans that were submitted. That's going to be A3. But just if you can help me, I'm looking at the photographs would be on,
Sure. So if you look at your hard copy there on sheet A2, photographs 3 and 4, photograph 3 shows existing conditions without the 10-inch height extension. But if you look at that photograph number 3, that actually does show the height extension, that white block on top.
so that should be number 4, and number 3, the conditions without, that looks to be the same though.
No,
Oh, I see the white block on top, okay.
Yeah, that's
The
the
number,
difference.
so 3 and 4 are switched.
Correct.
Any other changes?
No, that's it.
Okay, so these are the plans. All right. That's all we have to enter into evidence now, and the color photographs that are before the are on the screen. All right, Mr. Reagan, why don't you proceed now? Just so could you give the board a little history? We heard this application, if I'm not mistaken, this matter was before the board. In here, I have it.
Yeah, it was the June meeting last year, 2019. The applicant was previously before the board, and there were other variances required. There were relative to interior renovations and extensive exterior renovations to the home. What the applicant ended up doing was bifurcating the application, and the height was voted on separately. And the height variance that was requested at that time was for the elevator shaft alone, and which is the same thing we're requesting here for the height. But the difference is the proposed height at the June hearing last year was 36.5 feet, and the applicant has reduced the height of the proposed shaft to 35.9 feet. And that's one thing I would like to clarify. Mr. Little noted that Mr. Liss's plan indicated a height of 36 feet, which I believe he just rounded. The correct height is 35.9 feet. That's what we're proposing, which is 10 inches above the permitted height requirement. And the application also includes the slight increase in the floor area. The existing is 62.8%, and it's being increased to 63.3%. So that is the reason for the special reasons variance. Actually, even if I think the last time we reduced the number, or the number was proposed to be reduced, and we still needed a special reasons variance because we're over the 50% regardless of what we do. So the special reasons variance is required. So the variances that are requested are a proposed height of 35.9 feet and the floor area ratio of 63.3%, which is an increase of 0.5%. So the only proposed modification in this plan is solely the height of the elevator shaft. And I have, I believe Mr. Liss is present to briefly confirm the revisions to his plan. Jim Blayhut of Perennial Homes is going to testify regarding the shaft, and I also have the applicant present to testify as well. So I think at this time I'll call John Liss initially. John, are you on this meeting? I thought I saw your name.
There's a John with no last name, and then what did you say his last name was? I'm sorry, Jim.
Liss, L-I-S.
Maybe it's this John.
Mr. Liss, are you out there?
That is not me. Just unmute me, and that's not me.
Okay.
I know I saw a list on there earlier, but if he's not available right now, I guess we'll move ahead to Jim Blayhut.
Okay.
Mr. Blayhut, do you certify the testimony you give tonight will be true and accurate?
There's a Jim and a Jim's iPhone, so I don't know which one is which.
Song.
Mr. Blayhut?
I know I saw him earlier.
Yeah, I did too.
Sorry, guys. I
There he
didn't know I was muted.
There he is.
Sorry about that. Yes, I do swear that my testimony will be truthful.
Thank you, Mr. State your name, please.
Jim Blayhut?
All right, Mr. Raymond.
Mr. Blayhod, what is your involvement with the proposed project?
I've been working with the Pulios for several years, actually. I've been working as a design consultant along with Jeff Wells, and I'm also the contractor working on their home currently.
Okay, and actually, we might as well just state what your qualifications are. I know we did that at the last hearing, but this is a new application, so if you could just provide
We've
background.
accepted Mr. Blayhut as a licensed contractor in the state. Are you looking for additional qualifications?
No, that's the only qualification.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And why don't you give an overview, Mr. Blayhut, of what the applicant tried to do, taking into consideration the board's concerns at the previous hearing with the height, what's been done to try to get this project to be completed to the Pulios to their liking while taking into consideration the board's concerns.
Sure, Jim. So our previous application, as Jim already testified to, was to provide elevator access to a series of the roof decks that were part of the renovation of the property. And the proposed construction at the time anticipated needing 18 inches of additional height to the structure to accommodate the elevator. And subsequently, during the construction, when everything laid out, it was constructed, and some other opportunities arose where we could shorten the elevator shaft. We realized that we were able to more or less reduce the proposed increase that was required by 40 to 50%. And at that point, we realized that it was perhaps worthwhile that we could present our application to the board in such a manner to show that there would be minimal detriment in any way if we were able to provide this elevator access to the roof deck.
And the plans that were submitted show, as Mr. Snyder and I were discussing, what the elevator shaft looks like with and without the proposed extension. If you get into a little more detail about what the impact would be if the extension were approved.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So on sheet A2, which is the sheet that is inclusive of the photographs, image 1 shows a more or less perspective view of the structure as it was approximately a month ago. And the proposed area we're referring to here is, if you refer to figure 1, you kind of can see a white triangular pair of gables in the sort of the front right of the photograph. And to the rear of that, just to the right of it, further back on the image, is a bit of a tower element. Those elements are part of, and that, then you're looking at that. If you look at image 3, you're looking at that. If you're up at the deck level, looking across at it, and that existing structure was part of the application and permitting. It did not require any special conditions because it conforms to the 35-foot height. You'll notice, though, from figure 1, the area that we're seeking the additional 10 inches or so is blocked from view from this vantage point. And in fact, you have to go down the street toward the bay to the west a good block or so before being able to actually see this slight extension of the roof. If you look at figure 4, so figure 4 basically just took the condition of figure 3, and I took a moment to just paint a piece of wood that's the size of the roof structure that I had detailed on.
I know.
Excuse me, was there?
Nope, someone just got unmuted. Go ahead.
Understood. Showing a graphic or pictorial representation of what this roof structure that would be required over this closet to accommodate the elevator, just just so you could see the minimus nature of what we need to do there. And in comparing that, just so you know, figure 1 is taken with this white board on top that was demonstrating the roof structure. And because of the roof overhangs that are part of the approved structure, it blocks the sight line entirely.
Okay, so from the street vantage point on 12th Street, at least on this block, you're not going to be able to see the proposed extension of the elevator shaft.
From the ground, no.
So dumb question, but that piece you put up there is properly positioned for its final installation, right?
Yes, it is.
And just to confirm, the correct finished height, the proposed height is 35.9 feet or 35 feet 10 inches?
It is, and I can take it back to sheet A1. We took the time in figure 1 on that sheet because in our previous application, we were proposing a construction that was going to require us to open up the house and sort of figure out the process along the way a bit. But obviously at this point, every particular detail is known. So figure 1 shows, if you could scroll down a little more, I can't see figure 1 on my screen. Sheet A1, figure 1. It's the top left. There you go. It's a very small detail. That's it right there. So simply what it's showing is that the structure that's necessary, it consists of a 2x6 plate and then a 2x8 ceiling joist just to accommodate the ceiling structure spanning over the shaft and some insulation. And then just the plywood that we would need to affix the fiberglass to. So it's the summation of 1.5 inches, 7.5, and then 1.25 inches, which winds up actually being 10.25 inches of structure. So there's no question as to what's needed at this point because the project has moved along so that we know exactly what would be necessary to accommodate this.
And the area where that proposed extension is going to be is just 5.5 feet by 5.5 feet, correct?
It is, and to demonstrate it in figure 2, I believe that's figure 2, straight below figure 1 there. Yeah, it is. The shaded area there shows from a 2-dimensional reference that really it's just like, you think of it sort of as a little cap or a hat. What it would, in effect, allowing the full volume of the space that exists now to accommodate the elevator. And really, it's simply a roof structure over that is all we're asking for.
There'll be very little impact, if any, upon the neighboring properties.
Yes, we took the time to on sheet A2, figure 2. We wanted to take the opportunity to remind the board of the project as we started. So this is the house as it was originally built in 1995. This picture, of course, was taken prior to construction start in the fall of 2019. But you can see that very rectangular structure to the upper right corner of the photograph is where the stair tower and elevator shaft of the original layout was located. And I just wanted to demonstrate that we didn't create the stairwell or elevator element on this building, but rather we were just reconfiguring something that was already there. And thus we're not impeding the view of any of the neighbors.
Jim, what was the height of that, the prior stair tower and elevator shaft?
In the prior application?
No, the height of A2. If you're looking
The
at
structure
photograph 2.
prior to construction was at 32.5 feet. I think Mr. Little's letter identifies the height of the building prior. And I don't know what that information was provided from the previous, or unless I read it wrong. I'm just trying to find where he might have put that. That was.
No, I didn't have anything in there about the prior height. I was just confirming the proposed height.
Yeah, and I'm referring to memory, but the house constructed in 1995, I believe it conformed to the height at the time, which was 32 feet. For some reason, 32.5 rings a bell, but I would say for certainty that the building was at least 32 feet high.
Yeah, the prior plan that was submitted with the prior application had a proposed height of 32.5 feet. That was the existing.
The existing, okay, so the existing, right, and that was the house that was constructed in 1995 that the Pulios purchased in 2015.
Are there any questions for Mr. Blayhut?
Jim,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
that door on the outside go directly into the elevator? And why would you put a door there on the outside?
What image are you referring to? Make sure I'm
Looking at
clear.
I guess it's the west side of the house. You look down the tower, there's a door. Where does that door go?
The only door that I'm
This one. Can you see this? Right here.
I really can't see. I'm trying really hard.
That's a very
Oh, at
good
the bottom,
door.
that door at the
Right
bottom is the elevator equipment. There's an elevator closet.
Elevator equipment?
It's a yeah, it's a closet. Yeah, and if you look at sheet A1, figure 3, you'll notice that there's a small closet adjacent to the elevator shaft, and that carries straight down the building. So there's a closet on the floor below, excuse me, and that closet carries all the way down. And then for locating the elevator, hydraulic fluid and other mechanical components, that's the elevator closet that you're looking at there. The elevator is set back several feet from that face, shown in figure 2.
What about the existing impervious coverage? You got 72%, where 60 is the maximum. Is there a possibility of removing some of that impervious coverage and making it pervious?
You'd have to speak with the homeowners. We don't have any proposal to do anything differently with the lot. This was just reconfiguring.
Are they there? Are they here tonight?
Yes, they are. Why don't we swear them in at this time?
Mr. Polito, do you certify the testimony you give tonight will be true and accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want to state your name, please?
Rich Pulio.
Kim Pulio.
I'm sorry, what's your first name, ma'am?
Kim.
Kim, thank you. Thank you, folks.
Mr. and Mrs. Pulio, for the record, you're the current owners of the property, is that correct?
That is correct.
And when did you purchase the property?
2015.
Okay. And Mrs. Lenhard just raised a concern about the impervious coverage, where while it's not changing with this application, the existing amount is 72%, and that's what we're proposing. We're not proposing any change. She asked the question if you would be willing to remove any of the impervious coverage, which would constitute basically the pavers or the concrete area that you have on the property now. Is there an area where any of that could be removed, bring that number down at all?
We're open to look at that, yes.
Okay.
Is that a paver driveway and then there's concrete all around the side and up to the front door? When I'm looking at this, is that right?
Mr. Alyssa's plan up on the screen so we could reference that.
Mhm. This one?
Yeah. Any way to enlarge the?
Yeah, blow it out.
I can't see it very well, but
There you go.
There we go.
good. Like all of that is concrete. It's not pavers. Maybe that could be replaced with something that's permeable.
You're talking
Backyard
about
pool's pretty
the
much.
walkway on the west, Bonnie?
Pardon?
The walkway to the west?
Yeah,
Where you said the 7-foot setback?
right.
And Mr. Little, am I correct to state that if they simply removed 12% of the existing pavers and replaced them with pervious pavers, that they would be compliant with the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So Mr. and Mrs.
Works for
Puleo,
me.
Mr. Puleo, there are certain pavers that are permeable, pervious pavers that you're allowed to go up to 75%, 60% is the maximum of impervious coverage, but you're allowed to go above that with pervious pavers, an additional 15% up to 75%. So if you replace 12% of the existing pavers with a pervious paver, that would satisfy the impervious coverage requirement. Is that something that you're willing to agree to?
I would like to see the
I know it's
proposed
putting you on
area.
the spot, but
It would most likely, I would recommend a driveway. Rich, if we were to do this, I wanted to just pull out a calculator. So Jim, you're saying 12% of the 6,000 square foot lot?
correct.
Right.
Right, so 6,000 times 0.12. That's 720 square feet.
But you're not referring to the entire lot. I think you're talking about 12% of the 72% that's covered.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. I just want to make sure that the Pulios are aware of rather than using percentage, I'd like to convert that to area so that we're all understanding what's being asked.
I agree.
And remember, Jim, it's Frank.
You're in the
That-
driveway, Jim.
Hey, Frank.
That all has to be on your property. The driveway goes partially into the right of way.
I understand what you're saying. That's
Yeah.
why I'm thinking that's just not that would exceed the amount of impervious of the driveway and that sidewalk wrapping around. So perhaps if we said replace the driveway and the walkway around to the west with a pervious or semi-pervious material as a condition, I think that's a reasonable request by the board.
It might not be
The
feasible.
areas there, that's all. Yeah,
It
Jim.
may
I'm sorry.
not be feasible to get all the way down to the 60%, but if the
We're making
driveway,
a concession to move toward that.
yeah, the driveway alone would bring it down at least 300 square feet. Or actually, maybe
Jim, are you talking about the driveway that is not in the right of way?
the portion on the right. I'm taking into account the portion in the front that's not that's within the property line.
Okay.
But they could do it into the. Well, I guess if they're going to replace it, they would probably do the portion in the right of way as well.
Right.
So it would be consistent.
Couldn't they replace all that hard concrete and then?
At least then it would match, and you could actually take the concrete back a little farther past the intersection with the pavers too, maybe to the end of the elevator portion and gain that space as well.
Yeah, well, and I'll add the concrete that you see going across the front of the building is something we intended to remove. That was actually a continuous or monolithic pour or extension of the slab of the garage underneath. That was just like it's done when the house was first built in the 90s. And then at a later time, the driveway was added. So the idea was to remove that concrete at some point and bring a visibly softer and more attractive material all the way up to the garage door. It's literally like a 3-foot wide concrete apron in front of the garage doors effectively. And so it just happens that that's something that was already discussed as being desirable to the Pulios.
So how many square feet is it if they remove all the concrete around to the west side and in front of the garage and the pavers and put in pervious pavers?
I don't know if we'll have that answer with Mr. List not available, but perhaps
that kind of quantifies the scope under consideration, though, Jim. I think it's pretty straightforward what Bonnie is identifying.
Right, if they just agree to that area, regardless of what the number is, that would.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I'm proposing.
Okay.
What area are you referring to? Can somebody be specific?
This is Jim Stevens.
How about we say this? How about we say they replace everything but with pervious pavers in the front and on the west side up to where the impervious pavers begin?
Where the gate is of that back corner of the, of that element off to the west, that on the left side?
Right.
Right. I mean, leave the pool area and all of that alone, but just do the whole front and the side, as long as it brings it down to 60%. You could take, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but if you can take back that whole west side walkway, but I just don't want to disturb the pool and everything.
Right, so
Bonnie, it's Frank. You're going to be about 8% probably.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
This is Jim. Bonnie,
Yes.
this is Jim Stevens. Just, I mean, it's 720 square feet that they have to make pervious pavers. Let them show where they want to do it, and Frank can approve it. You know, let's not try to decide where it's going to go. Let that be their decision. They just need to do 720 square feet.
Okay.
And, you know, Frank he can sign off on it that they have accomplished that.
720 square feet is a rather large.
But that's the area you need to get down to 60%.
Right. I think too, when the pavers and everything were constructed, that ordinance wasn't in effect yet. I think it would be a reasonable compromise to do as Ms. Lenhart proposed and convert.
But you're asking for relief, so if we're going to give you relief, why don't we bring something in conformance that's very important to some of the board members, and that's impervious coverage.
Understand.
So
I just thought that would be a reasonable compromise. Mr. Little said it would be approximately 8%, which would bring it all the way down to 64% approximately from the existing 72.
I feel it should go to 60.
I know.
Any other comments?
This is Don Caxton. I think 64, if they can get down to 64%, we take out all the driveway pavers and all the concrete that goes up to the, I guess, the gate that moves into the pool area, I'd be satisfied with that. So, and not necessarily touch all the other pavers that go out to the pool area. This is just Don Caxton. That's my opinion.
This is Penny. I agree.
I agree too, Tom Middle.
Ken Muha, I agree.
And Scott, I do too.
So we're agreeing that if they bring it down to 64%, we're happy.
Well, I think what we're hearing is that we want to have all the concrete walkway and all the pavers from the front of the building to the curb replaced with pervious pavers, whatever that percentage is.
Right.
Yes.
Well, they could take the walkway and take it back a little farther too, to get to that number. And I'd like to see what they propose and see how it falls out.
Would that require?
At this point, we have to decide what we're doing with this application. If you want to see a plan with a revision and an accurate number, we need to carry this next month or have this plan revised and back to us for a resolution of approval.
Yeah,
that's why I just thought if we defined the area, and I know it was just an estimate, but of 8% that they would comply and remove that amount, and then whatever the resulting number was in the neighborhood of 64%.
Jim, how about we take the walkway along the west side back to the outside shower where that narrow walkway comes into the larger patio of the pool?
That's what I said. You gain another 2%.
Maybe.
I think, because that way you're not interrupting the larger area around the pool, which I'm sure would be problematic for multiple reasons. But the walkway, I think, is something we can manage without too much trouble.
Good idea, Jim. This is Don Caxton.
I like that. I'm happy with that.
I'm fine with that.
Julio, are you following this? Rich and Kim?
Yes, we are fine with that.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Okay, any other comments on this application before I make a motion?
We got to go to the public, Bonnie.
Oh, that's right. It's getting late. All right. right, I make a motion to open to the public. Do I have a motion to open it to the public?
I make a
Tom
motion.
Meadow,
to
make
open
motion.
public.
Scott, yes.
Okay, do I, anybody that wants, from the public that would like to speak to this application?
No one has their hand raised. If you don't know how to raise your hand, you can also unmute yourself if you'd like to speak for public comment. There is no one.
Okay, if there's no one, do I have a motion to close it?
Metal, motion to close.
A second, Penny.
Tom and Penny.
Thank you.
Could I make put forward a question though regarding this condition?
Sure.
So we're currently trying to complete the house as best we can to accommodate at least a portion of the summer. The landscape work and that you're referring to with the brick pavers and stuff, how would that be incorporated into the approval? Would be able to get a TCO for occupying the house while we're doing the site work? Or Frank, how do you envision that would work?
Well, if you want to request a TCO, we can talk about that.
Well, I'm anticipating that the house will be occupiable to get part of the summer in before we would have the ability to do all the site work that we're discussing right now.
I mean, I don't have an issue with a TCO, given the fact that it's a summer, and I could recommend that to the building department. And then by the end of September, let's say, you'd have to have the other work completed. Does that timeline work?
I think that would work. Yes.
Okay. So Stu, I don't know if you want to include that in a resolution that home could be occupied with a TCO prior to the landscaping being completed, and give them a date of whatever, the end of September.
So this is Scott. I think given the possibility of COVID-related workforce difficulties, I would think the end of October would be more fair.
I'm with you, Scott, the way things are working.
Yeah.
For that.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this application 2020-11?
Subject to the condition of the
Right.
elimination of some of the pervious coverage.
Impervious coverage down to, yes, down to the shower.
Down to the shower, from the front to through the side and to the shower.
I make a motion to approve. Scott.
Do I have a second?
I
Tom Meadow,
second.
I'll second.
May I ask, is this a 7 or 9-person vote?
This should be a 7-person vote.
Okay.
Because Nancy and Dan can't vote, and we don't use all.
Right.
All right. Mr. Cactus?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
There.
Yes.
Mr. Bizzano?
Yes.
Mr. Meadow?
Yes.
Mr. Muha?
Yes.
Mr. Horensky?
Yes.
And Mrs. Eddles?
Yes.
Thank you.
Approved?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The last application, 2020-12. The applicant is seeking a variance for takeout expansion of the restaurant.
Yeah, I'm going to leave the meeting. I have a conflict with this matter. Mr. Shin is here. Is he? Is Bob?
Bob Shin.
on?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, Bob. So I'm going to step out and you'll take over the board.
You guys do, I'll take care of it.
Representation. Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you, everybody. It was nice seeing you all again.
Same
Good
here.
night.
Yes, too.
Night, Stu.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stu.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. James Rabin on behalf of the applicant 207 North Bay LLC.
evening, Mr. Raven. Mr. Little has identified 3 variances here: a rear yard variance, an impervious lot coverage variance, and a parking lot, no parking variance. Mr. Little, that's the only three variances you identified in this application, correct?
That's correct. And then I had some questions regarding the percentage of the signage, which we should be hearing testimony on.
And the applicant tonight is asking for a waiver of the site plan approval. This is the Chegg properties 207 North Bay. And I have as exhibits, Colleen, correct me if I'm wrong, A1 will be the application dated June 10th, 2020. And it indicates Robert LaSala is the applicant. I have A2 is 207 North Bay LLC, the survey from Stephen Kelly of lot number 1. I have A3, 207 North Bay LLC. That's the architectural drawings of John Lister. A4 is 207 North Bay LLC. That's Stephen Kelly again, his survey of lots 2 and 3. And A5 is the proposed signage from Sign Pros. And Frank's letter is B1. I was Frank is B1 for our exhibits. Colleen, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Frank, we'll start with you if you don't mind. Would you raise your right hand? You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Aiden?
Just bear with me one moment. I know that the gentleman who's going to provide testimony regarding the signage had another meeting. I'm just sending him a text message to let him know we're starting in case he's free. Okay, so the application involves the chicken or the egg restaurant that everybody's familiar with here in Beach Haven that's existed for many years. And what the applicant is proposing to do, I think as recently as last summer, I'm not 100% sure, there was a candy store to the south of the existing chicken or the egg, right next door to the south. And what the applicant's looking to do is expand the restaurant into that candy store area, not to propose any additional seating. The dining room as it stands today will remain. There's no proposed increase in the seats. What the applicant is looking to do here is provide a takeout counter on the south side where the candy store was. So there would be a separate entrance where customers could go in to a takeout counter. And this would alleviate a lot of the congestion where people stand in front of the restaurant where the current entrance is. A lot of people wait out there and also inside the restaurant for takeout. Whereas if we're allowed to expand here and put a takeout counter inside that door to the south, people getting takeout could just walk right up to a counter, pick up their food and leave. And another portion of the proposed application is that to accommodate the potential additional volume just as a result of the takeout, the applicant is also looking to expand the kitchen briefly into the space which is behind the counter to the rear of that candy store area. So that's a summary of the application. The applicant's requesting a waiver from normal site plan review based upon the fact that the site is fully developed and no parking has ever been provided for this whole building. As everyone's aware, this is a long building that exists in between 2nd and 3rd Street. Doesn't extend the whole block, but about half of it, if not more. And there's no off-street parking for the entire building. There never has been. There's no room for any. So the applicant, and really the gross floor area is not changing. It was commercial use in the candy store as it was. So the parking requirement is not changing as a result of the proposed expansion. The parking requirement remains the same. It's just changing from one use to another within that unit, but it's all governed by the 1 space per 600 square feet of gross floor area. So there's really no change in the proposed parking. 10 spaces would be required, but as stated, there's nowhere to put parking and there's never been any at the site. And regarding the setbacks, there's absolutely no changes proposed to the exterior of the building other than modifying some signage and the applicant can testify if the exterior is going to be modified in any other way in that takeout area. And I think that's the overall summary. At this time, I will call the architect, John Lister. And Mr. LaScala is also available. He'll be testifying, and potentially I'll have testimony regarding the signage depending on his availability. He had a conflict with another meeting.
You guys start with Mr. Lister?
Yes,
Okay. Colleen, can you find him?
I'm unmuted.
Mr. Lister, will you raise your right hand? You swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes,
And state your name and address, please.
John Lister, 115 West Town Road, Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Have you ever testified before the Beach Haven Land Use Board?
Not Beach Haven, no.
Okay. Mr. Raven, would you qualify Mr. Lister for us?
Yes, Mr. Lister, would you please recite your qualifications for the board?
I hold degrees in architecture from the University of Southern California. I hold licenses in architecture in 38 states, including the state of New Jersey.
Have you testified previously before any zoning or land use boards or planning or zoning boards?
Yes.
Okay, can you approximate how many?
20.
Okay. Have you ever testified before the Beach Haven Land Use Board?
No.
Okay. And all of your licenses, particularly in the state of New Jersey, is still current?
Correct.
Okay. I'd submit.
Bonnie, I would recommend, Bonnie, that you qualify him as an expert.
All right, I qualify him as an expert.
Thank you. Mr. Lister, we've marked as Exhibit A3 a series of architectural drawings that were prepared under your supervision. Is that correct?
Yes.
And would you provide an overview for the board of what the proposed project entails from an architectural perspective?
The areas which have been used by the restaurant are being altered to continue to be used by the restaurant. Equipment is being changed over. If you take a look at the drawing, which is now being scrolled through, says existing kitchen area to be modified. Those two areas are the cross hatching. And then the area in front, which says vacant space, previously candy store, is the area to be used for a pickup counter. We are not proposing any seating or any other opportunities for anybody to, I guess, linger for an extended period of time other than picking up their order and leaving.
And so the proposed takeout area, is there anything in the front of that proposed area other than the counter?
From the counter to the storefront, there is not. It's just standing area.
And what's the approximate area of that standing area?
Give me a moment. Uh, 338 square feet.
Okay. And are there any proposed changes to the exterior of that building where the takeout area is going to be?
The only thing that we're not proposing anything that would be signage, and which is not, I believe, covered under our drawings.
Okay. And I believe you already stated this, but I just want to confirm there's no proposed increase in the number of seats in the restaurant. Is that your understanding?
That is correct.
Okay. Those are really only the only questions I have. I'll open it up to the board for questioning of the architect.
This is Frank Little. How many seats are in the current restaurant?
That may be something that Mr. LaScala may be able to answer, and also Mark Cohen, who is an employee at the Chicken or the Egg, is also available to answer that as well. Rob or Mark, would either of you be able to answer the question on the number of existing seats?
Are they muted or unmuted?
Mark is unmuted.
Mr. Raven, should I swear him in?
Yes.
We can have him testify. I don't see him. Are you? What's his name again, Jim?
Mr. Cohen?
Cohen. Mr. Cohen, can you hear me?
I can.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead, Jim.
Mr. Cohen, are you currently employed at the Chicken or the Egg?
Yes, I am.
And you were previously the owner as well, is that correct?
That is correct.
And how long have you been involved with the operation of the restaurant?
Its inception in 1991.
Okay. How many seats are there existing in the restaurant today?
Seats 130.
130?
Yep.
Okay. And there's
Did
no
you say
proposed.
100 Did you say 130 or 630?
130.
What was the number again?
130.
Okay, got it.
And there's no proposed increase in the number of seats with this application, is that correct?
Not that I am aware of.
We'll have Mr. Cohen on standby. Any questions at this point for either Mr. Cohen or Mr. Lister?
Yeah, this is Don Caxton. I have a question. What is the anticipated volume of customer pickups per hour? I know the candy store doesn't have very many pickups or many people going to it. My concern, very honestly, is there's no waiting area other than the sidewalk. And you're going to increase the volume, which is already very high there now. So between the hours of 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. on your busiest days, how many customers do you anticipate with pickup?
I assume that question is for myself.
Well, for either one, whoever can answer, I'm
I don't
trying
want
to
to
get a
speak
sense.
for Mr. Lascala, but what I can tell you from my best guess is that I don't anticipate a giant increase in volume because we already do a tremendous takeout business. The issue that we're trying to fix here is the congestion that when you combine dine-in with takeout and the congestion of our waiting area. So we're simply taking existing customers and moving them over to a different area to provide a little less congestion and hopefully streamline it for the customer experience.
So you anticipate no increase in volume?
Well, it may be a byproduct, but that's not the goal here.
If I could say a word.
Sure. Why don't, Mr. Shin, if you could swear in Rob Lascala.
Mr. Lascala, raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
Yes.
And Mr. Lascala, you are the current owner of the restaurant, is that correct?
I am.
Okay. And go ahead. You had something.
I work along with Mark. We work together. Mark is still heavily involved in the business. But this I could say, as an operator of 20 some odd restaurants, the whole purpose of this very, very expensive thing to do right now is for what Mark said exactly. It's to better run the restaurant. It's not to increase sales. Sales are great as they're good as it. Well, I won't speak for this year, but the previous year and past since Mark's had it, the sales are fine. It's the problem with operations, and the operations as an operator for 27 odd years is it could be done better by implementing this thing that we're trying to propose, and it'll help confusion and congestion and everything else as opposed to better the sales. The sales are fine. So we're not really, that's not our, like Mark said, it's not our, this thing was done for, to run an operation better.
And as Mr. Cohen stated, it's not a situation where people aren't aware that the Chicken or the Egg offers takeout. That's going to continue. It's just simply a different area for them to pick it up to reduce congestion. Is that correct?
Yes. It gives a bad experience for the people that are coming and dining. It just doesn't, not a bad experience. How can I say it? Just a little more disruptive. There's too much going out of one spot. We're trying to make it run efficiently and better.
Where do customers currently go that are picking up takeout while they're waiting for their food?
Where the hostess, well, forget about right now, because right now obviously is a whole nother.
Right. Putting aside the COVID restrictions.
So in the previous past, they would just come to the hostess station where a person that would be coming in as well to sit down would be at the same spot.
So you'd have
Not
people
taking
waiting
anything away from, what's that?
I'm sorry. So you'd have people waiting for their tables overlapping with people waiting for the takeout, just resulting in a lot of congestion in that area, spilling into the outside.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not trying to take anything away from the 30 years of the excellent job Mark and his brother's done. It's just I'm just a separate eyes come in, and we just see a better way for just to run efficient.
Mrs. Penny, can I speak a little bit, say something? I just wanted to agree with you that I am a patron of the chicken and the egg often, mostly just to do takeout. And when we come into the main part of the restaurant, when we could, before COVID, there were people waiting for tables in there and people picking up food in there. So that was very congested, and I agree. I think you got a good idea there.
This is Don Caxis. Is any thought, I'm looking at the customer waiting area, waiting for the takeout in the old candy store. Has any thought been given to making that a little bit larger so that you can have more people wait inside as opposed to having people wait on the sidewalks?
Who's that question for?
That's for either the architect, I guess. I mean,
it's
again, I'm trying to get as many people off the sidewalk waiting to come in because, you know, and trying to see if maybe the customer waiting area inside.
300, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. 350 square feet is a nice size area for a waiting. I have half my stores are takeout only in my restaurant group, and 350 square feet's a lot. I mean, it'd be surprised, what you could put in there.
If you look at the two areas, the existing waiting area for both the eat in and the takeout, and then you compare it in the drawing that we submitted, and you compare it to the proposed area for just takeout is probably about 40 to 50, is probably like 75% larger than the one that's currently there just for, and it'll be just for takeout where the current one is combined.
So you're almost doubling the size of the space for waiting?
Actually, I guess you in some fashions could actually consider that you're doing more than doubling.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thanks for clarifying that.
This is Scott. From a common sense approach, just looking at it, having a counter dedicated to web-in or call-in orders and have a dedicated spot for those patrons to pick up and leave, I think would also improve the congestion for parking because people be in and out quicker. So I think that's an added benefit to this plan.
I have a question. Will you have designated curbside parking, or do you already have that?
Did you hear that question? She said, is there going to be designated curbside parking? I don't want to speak for Mr. LaScala, but possibly during the COVID restrictions, but I doubt that would be there when the restrictions are lifted, being that it's on-street parking.
I have a question. Is any of this still already there? I mean, is this kitchen already exists part of this into the candy store?
The kitchen is in the area in the back is walk-ins, and so the only difference to the area now will be adding more a cook area.
So the whole section behind the counter, the takeout counter, does not exist now.
It is existing.
It does?
If you kind of like the candy store is the pickup area, and behind the pickup area was dry storage, walk-ins, etc.
And what's there now?
I'm sorry, if you look at D 1.1.
I'm looking at A 1.1.
I think you're one page too far. If you can scroll back a page, which is now on our screen here. You see the dashed line that goes through roughly the center of that front area?
All right, I see that.
Okay, so that separates the candy store from the kitchen.
Area to be modified. So it's an existing kitchen already.
It is a kitchen use. Yes, you see there's an opening there into the kitchen.
Okay, that's what I want to know. There is a kitchen there already, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What about these two existing coolers into, it looks like another store. Is that there?
Yes.
So did you get permits to do all this? Has this always been there? Is this something you just did?
Been there. The space goes from all the way to the corner of the block.
I can't hear anybody. I don't know who's talking.
I'm sorry. We are not proposing. It's not. I am not aware of anything that's been done that has not received a permit.
Do me a favor, whoever's answering, just identify yourself, because if I can see your picture, I know who you are, but if I can't, I'm not sure exactly who's answering. I think that was the architect. So I guess maybe we should have the architect answer these questions. Bonnie.
Yes, it was. Thank you very much. I apologize for that. Yes, is my understanding. I'm not aware of anything that's been done without a building permit or the appropriate permits.
This is Rob LaScala. If I could tell you the space that in hand has been was there. The coolers, the walk-ins, everything was there prior to me taking over.
This is Dan Allen. Is there any cooking equipment in that area as we speak?
No.
That's all going to be added in?
Yeah, that's what we're proposing.
I see.
Proposing a more efficient kitchen. I'm having trouble like seeing everybody here, but we're just propose a more efficient kitchen as well, just to, that goes with the whole concept of the takeout area.
Do you have any proposal for the rest of this empty space where these two little coolers are?
Right now it's just blank retail space. I'm not using it for anything now. People moved out that were there, if that's what you're asking. I'm not really, what coolers are you referring to? Which ones?
If you go right in the front of the candy store, back on the right, there are two, looks like coolers or doors into something, two little squares. What are they?
Yeah, they're and then behind that's another freezer walk-in. Yeah, there's three separate walk-ins in there. And what was your question? Am I doing anything with that space?
It looks like it. Yeah, it looks like it's going into the other retail space of the other building or the other store or something.
No, it's not going in any other retail space.
Wow.
There's a corner space out front that's vacant. There was and other than that, that's all that's left there.
Okay.
This is Ken. Is there an access into the current existing Windcrest space from the old Chicken and the Egg?
Yes, there's a hallway there. It goes down to the front of from the Chicken and the Egg all the way to the side doors, you may say. There's a hallway that goes all the way through that. It goes into the space of whatever, I don't know what you're referring to, but I guess that's the old tenant. And then there's a side door as well there.
So you were always able to access the old Windcrest space through the Chegg? That's the question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. There was a door, but there was a hallway with a door on either side.
Okay.
This is Scott on A1.1. What's the pink rectangle signify?
It's a sink.
Okay.
Why is it pink?
The color came out.
I was wondering that too.
Warm water.
It costs more money.
That's right.
Okay, any other comments before I open it to the public?
Well, are we going to hear anything about the signage?
Yes, I believe Nick is now on the on the call. And Nick, I apologize. I don't recall your last name at the moment.
It's Nick Capados.
Thank you.
Spell that for me, please.
Mayor Nick Capados.
K-A-P-P-A-T-O-S.
Okay, and Mr. Raven, I'm going to swear him in. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Okay, and your name and address, please.
Nick Capados, 1215 Black Horse Pike, Glendora, New Jersey, 08029.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Capados, we've marked as Exhibit A5 proposed signage that I believe you prepared. Is that correct?
Yes.
And since submitting that, did you have an opportunity to review Mr. Little's review letter?
I did.
And I did send over to the board today the document that you had emailed to me. It was too late to make it onto the board website. So if you could just describe what was sent over today.
Yes, Mr. Little had questioned the, your sign, there it is. Your signed ordinance is based on the square footage of the facade of the buildings. So what you have, and I showed both just in case it came up, the new area for the takeout only is approximately 15 feet high by 27 feet long. The ordinance currently, as it's written, says that the signage, you're only allowed 5% of that area, or 50 square feet, whichever is less. In this case, that would give you 405 square feet, which would be about 20.25 square feet, which would be allowed on this area. The sign proposed is slightly larger at 23.5. But I do want to make clear, if you're looking at the drawing, because of the uniqueness of the logo, the Chegg logo, the way the E and the C kind of go above, I would say that even though the square footage is slightly greater, it's only because of the way it's calculated, the highest point by the widest point. I did also show the existing building, the chicken and egg sign, because as the ordinance also says, a business is only allowed one sign. But in this particular case, this was a separate storefront. So there was a sign there for the candy store. So it made sense to push people towards this door for the takeout only. So the sign above the door would make it clear that this is where you would get for the to-go items, the takeout items. And then the other drawing shows just a couple awnings to help push people to this door for the pickup for the takeout.
So it's Frank Little. So based on that, for the new sign, there's a slight increase in the size permitted. We would need a variance for that. The existing sign is probably more than double, but it's pre-existing. So I don't have as much of a concern as that. And the other sign is slightly over. But when you look at the configuration with the way the letters are, it's close. But I
Hey,
think
Frank, this is Scott. I have a question.
Yeah.
The way this is being calculated, it's measuring a lot of white space. Would it be permissible for them to calculate the actual space, given the letter overlaps over the board that they're mounted on, and
Well, you
discount
could,
the
but
white space?
I think the ordinance, just for purposes of the record, the ordinance speaks to the overall size. And because the letters are sticking up, by ordinance, you calculate that. So
okay.
In reality, the sign, if you went around the entire edge of the letters, you're probably closer to the 20 square feet. But for purposes of the record, we have to grant a variance for this sign.
Okay.
And then we also have to grant it because we have two signs on one business.
Got it.
Two signs plus the overage on the new sign, because I believe the other sign, similar to what happened at Murphy's Market, there were signs that were pre-existing, that were there. That remained.
Yep.
Frank.
Yes.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How's anybody going to know this is where you go pick up takeout? It says nothing about takeout.
Well, it
just
says
looks like
Chegg to go.
Yeah, the
It does
proposed.
say takeout.
It says Chegg to go.
Chegg to go. Okay. I also have another question. What about the colors of these awnings?
They're showing them as,
The master plan and also the streetscape. The master plan has colors suggested in it. I don't know what color these awnings are, and, you know, we kind of were not excited about plastic awnings.
well, I
It's
believe
about
they're,
plastic awnings. It's Sunbrella fabric. So it is a fabric, Sunbrella
Oh, okay.
cloth fabric. But it is
Alright.
very colorful because the Chegg logo and branding is all very colorful.
I don't object to changing a color if there's satisfaction for
what you're gonna change.
board.
Yeah, I mean, if you could pick a color that was in the master plan, that would be great. I'm sure yellow is there, so,
So the master plan does designate colors for awnings. Is it in there?
it doesn't designate it specifically for awnings, but it designates it for colors for the business area.
Nick, you could switch it to yellow and another line. I mean, that's, we could like
Yeah.
definitely satisfy the board on this if that's possible. This is
Right.
Bob Scala. Not purple is really not my go-to color anyway. So.
Good.
The only thing I would say is the top color should be a darker color only because of the wear and tear that awnings get in the sun. So as long as there's I would only say that as long as there's a color that's going to hold.
I'll be happy to present a color that everybody's satisfied with. Hopefully we understand it should be somewhat bright or something. I mean, which I don't think anybody's negative about that. So
Are you leaving the color of the candy store, or are you painting the front?
I wanted to do, well, as it stands now, it's just a stucco. I mean, I personally don't like it. I probably, but as of now, I wasn't even going to go there yet.
Okay.
You know?
And what about what you're putting in the windows? Like it says candy there now. What are you planning? Just to put in a shade or what?
I'm not going to have any shades. I want people to see in. So
Okay.
just an open window plan at this point.
Okay. Right. Any other questions?
Is there any, Don Caxis, is there an opportunity to put benches there?
It's tight out there.
Well, that's part of the streetscape.
Yeah, but let's back up on the streetscape. We're getting an echo for some reason. I'm not sure why. I don't know why we're getting an echo, but.
I don't either.
So here's the thing, in my review letter, I don't believe the streetscape is going to be triggered by the amount of renovation occurring. So you would have to, you know, I had asked for just a clarification in order to make that determination, but I don't believe they're going to hit it. So.
But you don't know.
You don't know, and that's why I asked.
Yeah.
I said it may not be required, but the applicant should provide the appropriate estimates for formal verification.
We're just trying to bring the business district all into some kind of conformity, so it looks like you're in Beach Haven. And
Does
that's
anybody know what the clearance is between the front of the candy store and the curb edge?
I got, hang on, I'll scale it. Let you know in a minute.
These benches will tighten that up, whatever it is. And there's a lot
I
of.
think benches look great in front of those two windows.
Bonnie, this is Jim Stevens.
Yeah.
When were the signs submitted?
I don't know. Ask Colleen. She'll have the date.
I did not see the signs.
This sign I sent with all of your other applications. This one,
Okay.
I got at 5:30 today.
That was just the dimensions of the building though.
Yeah.
But the actual sign was sent with the
The
application.
other ones were set earlier.
Okay, I didn't see that for some reason. I missed it.
1 inch and 15 feet.
I am concerned about the streetscape, you know,
So am I.
in town. So I personally don't know if I'm ready to act on signs.
This is Mark Cohen again. Someone had asked a question about the distance from the end of the building to the sidewalk, and I believe it's 12 feet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just scaled it. It's about 12 feet.
I mean, I know exactly what it is because I just measured it for the COVID tables and all that. So it's 12 feet.
Well, that's a wide sidewalk.
It is.
Right.
So Jim, what is your concern?
the streetscape in town. I mean, all of a sudden you're putting some pretty loud signs in town.
Well, he's trying to modify that and not make them loud.
Well, I understand, but can you do that at one setting, or do we need to give them input and they come back with something?
As
different?
far as the sign goes,
Yes.
yeah.
If this is Rob, the scholar, so it's actually the first time I'm seeing the purple on the awning. If that's really like, and that's the truth on that end, because I think the awnings were added later. But the orange, if we just take the sign in hand, the orange is not that's a beach color, and the yellow is fine. And, if we do something with the awnings, or we just, I think then I don't think I would like to hear more concerns on that, because I think the sign, if you just look at the sign itself, I don't believe it's, well, obviously it's what we kind of picked out, but is that something that is a concern to you? If we just look at the sign itself and just take your eyes off the awnings at this point?
Oh, this is Nick again. I could suggest two things. The awnings could be a black umbrella, which is very popular. And then I do want to point out, if you look at the existing, this Chegg logo comes from the original chicken and the egg graphics. This is just a takeoff from the existing logo and existing artwork that has worked at the other building for many years.
But if I could say like that, I think it was a Jim. I don't have everybody's faces on my thing for some reason. I'm seeing more of the architect plan, but is it Jim or somebody that had a concern with the actual landscape, or that wasn't the landscape, wasn't the word, whatever word you use.
The streetscape.
Streetscape for the sign.
Yeah. Right.
Is there something that we could just speak about right now? Obviously, we're here talking about it. Is the orange too loud of a color as well?
I'm not, I just think we're trying to make something classic that goes with the rest of the feel of the town. You're near the historical district, and we're trying to pull you in to make you go with the rest of the town, not
that's fine.
Out with purple awnings and yellow. That's the only concern.
That's
I think.
fine. I mean, I want to just be on record. I didn't pick the purple awnings out. My friend and Mayor Nick.
I know.
Who, he does a great job at all my signs, all my stores, but I never really approved the purple. So maybe that we're getting off the.
Either black or navy or something that's more subtle.
We could revisit the actual sign itself. I believe that's a small part. Like I'll revisit it. I'm looking to try to do whatever's right. Maybe we could go with a tin look, or like a historic, like a more of a classic look somehow, and do it with silver and I don't know, off the top of my head. But once again, that's not a concern of mine.
But I think what Jim is saying is tonight we would vote on the takeout, but not include the sign until we see something.
That's fine. I'm fine with that.
Is that correct, Jim? Is that what you'd like to see, Jim?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, what I thought.
Fine.
But Rob, that would make you have to come back for another meeting. How about getting approval for the size of the sign and maybe submit to the professionals? Is that allowed, or for the board to review it so that we don't have to come back for another meeting?
I'm not good with colors, I can tell you that. So I'll bow out on that. But listen, I think if we are going to approve this, and we haven't heard from the public yet, but if it gets approved, you could make it subject to receiving anything before the resolution's passed, I believe, at the next meeting. So
well, that could happen.
We could do something like that to make sure everybody's on board with the signage and anything else.
What about the three-person committee? This is Nancy. Could they look at the sign situation?
I really think we should keep it with the application with the full board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a 5-color rule or something? Is there anything we just get approved on that? We have to use those 5 colors or something? I mean, I've been on a lot of these sign meetings. I've never understood what, like, to come back and reapply for colors.
No, I don't think we want you to have to reapply. I mean, if we can do it like Frank said.
I'm open to, yeah, and I'm open. If there's a 5-color rule or 3-color rule, I mean, at this point now, the sign itself and the directing the traffic into this space at this point in time and what's going on and everything that's going on and down the road, hopefully to build this thing back up in the future, that's more important to me than
Right.
against your new look for Beach Haven. That's fine by me. I'm open. I'm fine with it.
And Frank, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, as long as somebody helps me pick colors, I'm fine.
Well, I'll help you.
I only
I'll
paint,
help you.
I only paint what my wife tells me to paint. I don't pick colors.
Yeah, we'll work with that.
All
Why
right.
don't we- All right. There are no more questions for the board or concern with the board. I'm going to open it, make a motion to open it to the public. There are no more questions? Okay, can I have a motion to open it to the public?
Mrs. Penny, so moved.
Second?
Scott, second.
Okay, anybody from the public have any comments on this
Try to
application?
go upstairs and see if I can hear.
Barbara Kona has her hand raised.
Is that okay with you? It's just weird. I can't.
Okay, Barbara?
Hold on one second. It says John Harvey on my screen.
Oh.
Colleen, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Do you mind turning on your video as well? I'm sorry.
You know what? I don't know. Oh, here we go. Can you see me?
Yeah.
So,
There's Frank.
my only comment is
Well,
regarding.
hold on, Ms. Kona, please. Let me just swear you in. You might be testifying, you might be asking a question, but let me swear you in anyway. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth?
I do.
And then your name and address, please, so I have it.
Barb Kona, 100 Northwest Avenue.
Thank you.
My only comment is regarding the sign. Bonnie, I was thinking, isn't this a great opportunity to do the bracketed signs that they talked about in the master plan that, you know.
You mean the ones that come out from the building?
Yeah, bracketed signage is way friendlier to the drivers that are driving through town, to the people that are walking up and down the sidewalk, rather than a sign that is on the facade of the building.
Right.
It's an opportunity, and I think the town misses this opportunity frequently when a new business comes into town, to tell them what the plan is for following the master plan for streetscape, like you mentioned with benches and whatever it is that you want to see. But rather than seeing someone spend money on a sign that, you know, we're trying to transition, or I thought we were, it really lends a lot of charm to the area, and it would actually benefit them as a business.
Okay, we'll think about that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Barb.
As a follow-up comment to that, I've got a question for Frank Little. This is Scott. From a public safety standpoint, what would be preferable? Something mounted to the building or standing off the building on brackets?
As long as it's high enough and you can walk under it and you don't hit your head on it, it's probably fine if it's
I'm
bracketed.
thinking of high winds and you know,
Well, I mean,
things getting ripped.
anything you build has to withstand, you know, be designed properly.
Okay.
So I don't have any other comment about that. So.
Any other comments from the public?
Mr. John Harvey has his hand raised.
Yeah, this is John Harvey, 211 2nd Street. And I
Mr.
just
Harvey, if
asked
you
you
don't
to,
mind, let me just swear
Go
you in,
ahead.
if you don't mind. You swear
go
or
ahead.
affirm the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And your address, please?
Yeah, 211 2nd Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important to get some context on the incremental change that's happened at Chicken or the Egg over the last couple of years since Mark and his brother owned it. And, you know, the new ownership came in, which is great. Decided to open extended hours. Now it's not just a summer place, but it's a year-round place. And I don't know the hours exactly, but I can tell you on 2nd Street, we've got a huge amount of cars, which parking we know is an issue, which is one of the questions I'm going to ask you. And the problem is that many of the people that take out at your restaurant happen to sit in their car in our neighborhood, meaning right in front of our houses with their stereo on, eating food, and often it's left at the curb. And there's a significant amount of litter. When Mark was there, I think they did a great job of having somebody pick it up occasionally, but still an issue. okay? It's interesting because both Rob and Mark said this is about operational performance or excellence or whatever, but to think it's not about additional volume, I think is foolish. And I think Mr. Rabin, even in your opening, you said it's operational, of course, additional volume. So I think to think that this is not going to increase the amount of volume, both summer and off season, at an intersection that, if you remember the parking conversations, is a significant issue, both from parking availability and, I believe, pedestrian safety. So we can say this is about improved operations and simplicity, but it's really about additional volume. And so one of the questions, and I know I don't quite understand the parking laws, but if there's a ordinance that says they're required to create 10 parking spaces, and I know they have the space, but that doesn't preclude them from buying a lot and putting the parking on that. Why would we be waiving any parking requirements with the current challenge in the community until the borough has decided to implement and activate a multifaceted parking situation? And so, I'm just bewildered by this. This is just going to be operational improvement. We're going to get our food quicker. It's going to create more people down the side streets. It's going to create more litter. Hopefully some of the other Second Street people on the phone will talk up, because I've heard from them about the noise late at night. And then there's a question of, I think it might be the only business, and quote me if I'm wrong, about 7-Eleven and Wawa that's open 24 hours. And what does it take to get a 24-hour business? So I understand this is about that site. I understand this is about these issues. But I also think that you need to consider the context for how it impacts the overall community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, John.
Oh, can I make one more comment? One other thing. And maybe Rob can answer this, or Mark. I believe some of this construction is already going on, even to the point of taking out some of the alley space behind the restaurant. And one other problem we've had for a long time.
I can assure you, no, the only thing we did was improve the cement in the alleyway due to the comments from the township.
Okay, great.
I appreciate it. I put a whole new draining system in, all new cement. We try to get rid of all the excess stuff that's in there and have places for everything in the back alleyway. We understand that it's so close to residents there. I've changed the bread delivery to the front door, to the front of the business. So in the morning, is what you're referring to. The loud noise was the bread delivery guy, and we changed that to go to the front of the restaurant. And prior to COVID, they even had a key, just to elude anybody walking in that back alleyway. We changed trash companies to better the and additional trash things, so the pickup was later in the morning, and they came more frequently and able to do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and an additional day once summer would come. So we are. I'll speak for myself and Mark as well, who still works with me there. We're together on this thing. We're attentive and trying to do anything we can. It's just not my first store. I have 20-some locations. The residents and my neighbors, even commercial and are my first priority, and they always have been. And that's something I strive on, and any area that we have a comment on, we try to fix. So
yeah, I don't know what you can do about increased business and people eating in their cars, though, Rob. And I do appreciate it.
I want to explain something to you on this, and I'll stand on this as an expert. Like somebody mentioned that John Lister, who is an expert as an architect, I'll be an expert as an operator for 26 years, starting from nothing and building my restaurant company. There's not a doubt in my mind that we're not going to that this is just going to be a better, efficient rule. And it's not just words. It's true. It's truth. It's a better, efficient, better thing. As far as people eating in their cars, I don't understand that. And I don't understand the negativeness of opening up in the winter. I don't know. I never heard one complaint about us opening up in the winter. I think that's an added value for the town, for the people that the residents and the year-round person. I grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey, went to Ocean City High School. I love having the summer people come down, because that's what made our town worth what it is. But the winter people need to enjoy something as well. So now we're open for the winter people. The people on the mainland, the people that live in the residents in Beach Haven, don't have to worry about the crowds. They come in, they enjoy our food on that time. If anything, I feel like it's an added advantage that we opened up in the winter, not a negative, you know?
Yeah, no, I take your expertise, well taken, and I am more concerned about the summer. The other thing I'll add, and by the way, Rob, this is the first time I've seen you, heard of you as a neighbor. So I know you're saying we didn't come with complaints. Trust me, there's plenty of complaints, and now that we have your info, we'll send it to you. The other issue is you mentioned your spread delivery truck, but any given day, and this is a tribute to how successful the business is, there's at least 2 tractor trailers with their engines idling and their refrigeration idling on 2nd Street. And I believe, and this might be a compliance issue, I think the loading zone for your store is on 3rd Street. And so, these are all things, any one of them we can talk through and say, hey, this is part of a good business. I'm asking the land use board to take a step back and realize the impact of this on the many other issues we've discussed over the course of the last year and a half and experienced over the last year and a half. And I'd ask you, with your 27 businesses, my only comment is how many are in a seasonal community that has 900 off-season residents? So that's my comment.
Mr. Burris? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, this is Scott. I was going to say, this is a couple times now we've heard of code enforcement discussions come up. The land use board is not responsible for code enforcement, and I think in the summertime, given what the previous commenter just stated about the loud noise and the trash from people eating their cars, I think that can be resolved just by a heavier presence of bicycle and foot traffic officers perusing that neighborhood.
This has been raised, just so you know, including with the police department, how more people for pedestrian crossing at 2nd in the Bay Boulevard, and we've seen no compliance. And we do believe that's an issue, and I realize that's not your responsibility.
This is Don Caxis. I have a question. John Harvey brought up the issue about hours of operation. What are the hours of operation going to be for the takeout?
The hours of operation takeout would probably be 11 to 11. Well, I'm not, don't even correct me on when we open, but I know we'll close probably around, depending on the day of the week, 9 to 11 o'clock at night.
Thank you.
So can we limit the hours of operation to, say, 10 p.m. for takeout?
Mark, that's probably what, is that kind of what we were thinking of anyway, wasn't it? Kind of? Or what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not talking about, again, we're talking about post-COVID, right? I mean, we're talking about in theory when we resume some sort of normality. Is that the question?
It's almost over. I can go in 20.
Yes, I would think it'd be after post-COVID.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
summer is completely, I don't know, it's very confusing, and everybody wants you to succeed and have a successful business. But I do know that the chicken or the egg, there's been complaints because you were open 24/7, 24 hours around the clock.
The takeout, I'm sorry to interrupt. The takeout, we weren't planning it though. It wasn't gonna be a late night. It was just gonna be hours of operation. I mean, if I had to talk, 10 o'clock is reasonable.
yeah, I mean, our peak takeout hours are not at 3 in the morning. Our peak takeout hours are 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. like every other business, like every other restaurant. That's the peak time when people are ordering takeout.
Yeah, we weren't looking to stay open any kind of weird 10 o'clock. I mean, it's the first time like came into it, but I mean, top of my head, 10 o'clock seems.
Is there anything that you can do about these trailers on 2nd Street, loading and unloading? Is they do it there because it's closer to the door, or?
From what I understand, and Mark,
I mean, in the time in the morning, I mean.
I'll comment to this.
They added parking spaces there, didn't they, Mark, or something? I was with the chief.
We actually lost some spaces when Buckaloo's built
right
their latest restaurant there. We've actually lost quite a bit of our ability to take deliveries, and you couple that with their deliveries, it makes things a little bit harder on us. We take deliveries from both sides, from 3rd Street and from 2nd Street. But the Third Street side it seems to have it presents more challenges because there's people that park in that space from the other
Real estate office?
yeah, yeah. So it becomes a little more challenging though. What we have done is I try to work with our vendors to deliver not all at once, but it's very difficult when you're dealing with things that you can't control. You have there are people that do their routing, and you say, I want my delivery between 8 a.m. and 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. It doesn't always work that way. In a perfect world, we could structure our deliveries so that they were all, one after another, not at the same time, and also not at the same time as Buckaloo's is getting a delivery. But unfortunately, that is not our reality, and we have made every effort to, when possible, have them park on the boulevard or close to the boulevard, thus interrupting the traffic flow on Second Street as little as possible. But it's not a perfect scenario. It's not. And
Is that alleyway behind there? Is that alleyway behind there?
Can I just ask a question? I just want to understand this. What are your hours of operation Monday through Saturday, say?
You have to ask, are you saying currently or
Yeah,
traditionally?
last year, before COVID hit, what were your hours of operation?
24/7.
24/7?
Yes.
Okay.
We've been 24 hours a day since from Memorial Day to Labor Day, not during the preseason or the postseason,
Right.
but from Memorial Day to Labor Day, we were open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Again,
30, right? 29 years.
Okay.
well, so in 1991, we were open on Bay Avenue across from what was then Beals.
Right.
We were open. In fact, I think when we first opened, we only did breakfast. The second year we opened late night. We went till about 4 a.m. We fed off a lot of the bar crowd. Our third year in business, we moved to our present location, and that was we opened 24 hours a day right away. That was always our business model. It was always our intention. And
were you approved for that way back then, or you just did it?
I wasn't not approved, if that's such a thing.
Yeah. I mean, hours of operation were never approved when you moved into where you are now.
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, we did everything the right way.
Hey, Bonnie. I would like it if there's some way that we can help, that you can work with the people on 2nd and 3rd Street.
Well, I think that Rob is.
If I can interrupt, I was trying to ask, the back alleyway there from what I see behind the real estate, it's all like that stone area. Is that common area, or is that like, because people park there? If we could leave that as a delivery thing, all the trucks could back up to that, and I think that would eliminate, Mark, right? Eliminate all, like, anybody coming delivering on 2nd Street.
Yeah, we could eliminate those spots. There's 3 spots there. It's enough room for a tractor trailer.
I mean, I could get tractor trailers backing up in there, pull in, pull out. Nobody would have the difference on that. 2nd Street would never get clogged up. Which, by the way, because I met the chief of police out there, because they added those. They used to park in the middle of the street. Now they can't even do that because of, I guess, that restaurant across the street from us now, Buffalo, whatever, and that's causing a problem. But if they could eliminate that, if that's common area, maybe they're just parking there, not allowed to park there, or maybe we can
Is that required parking for your apartments upstairs? You know?
Are we talking about 3rd Street or 2nd Street? I must have blipped out for a second.
I'm talking about 3rd Street, right? Am I, Mark? The stones.
Yeah, I assume you're talking about. So on 3rd Street, we don't own those apartments over there.
Okay, I thought he was talking about 2nd Street. I'm sorry.
I'm talking about behind the buildings that it's like an alleyway, and unless to me, I don't know if is that allowed parking, because that could be a great loading zone.
It's an easement. It's technically an easement, and
so why are cars parking
there? I've just chosen not to harass my neighbors for parking there because there's very little place for them to park.
Once again, like if that's a loading zone, that eliminates the problem right there.
And they don't live there the real estate people don't live there. I'm more concerned about the people on 2nd Street and 3rd Street that have homes there than I am about a commercial business on the corner and parking.
No, it's not commercial, no residential park there.
I thought there was a real estate agent company on the corner of 3rd Street.
Commercial. Yeah, the commercial.
Commercial, right.
Yeah, commercial, not residential.
Well, I think these are all things that could be considered.
I have a
I
question.
think there is, something's got to be done to keep your business being successful as it is, and yet the neighbors have some peace and quiet. There's got to be something.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
I just don't know what it is, but they've suffered long enough there. There've been enough problems there that, and this is a perfect opportunity to try to improve it so you have a good reputation in town that you're trying to do. So,
Hey, Bonnie, I have a question.
yes.
It's Ken. I know that at one point a few years ago, this had popped up, and Gus Doyle had said that there's an ordinance that actually does not allow 24-hour operation. And in consideration of not doing it years ago, I guess Mark and him worked out a deal. Can we say definitively, do we know, is there an ordinance that says no business can operate 24/7 in Beach Haven? Or is that a myth? Or
I
do
think
we ask
that's a
you that
myth.
question? That's a myth.
I'd like to
I
comment.
think it is. We tried to research it.
What deal are you referring to? Because I don't recall working on
No, not a deal, a conversation. Gus Doyle told me about it. And he said that there was an ordinance in town that said there's no 24-hour operation. I don't know that that's
Forgive my
accurate. I'm
ignorance, but
asking the question.
Gus Doyle.
Gus Doyle was on the land use board.
Yeah, I don't, so I'm gonna have to say that that's probably a myth then, because I don't recall having a conversation with any Gus Doyle.
Okay, so there is no ordinance about 24-hour operation in the town of Beach Haven?
No, I think each application that comes before us, we approve their hours of operation when they do the application.
Got it.
There's no regular ordinance. Everybody has different hours.
No, I mean, Nance, do you know?
Yeah, a little bit. I have to say, I worked with Kathleen Daniels, who owned the property next to the property that Rob LaScala owns now, way before Sandy. So 10 years ago at least, and we met a lot, and Mark met with us. And so this problem has been going on for really a long time, and we did address the 24-hour thing. We looked into that when Rich Crane was manager of the town, and I think then after Rich, Sherry, but mostly Rich. And to the best of my knowledge, there's no ordinance that says you cannot operate a business 24 hours in Beach Haven. I think what happened is the chicken and the egg back in the 90s started operating 24 hours, and so when they say they're grandfathered in, they're really not grandfathered in legally, but they've been doing it so long that to tell them to stop at this point is rather difficult. And as Bonnie said, what we do now is every business that comes before us, we more or less say what their hours of operation have to be. So the chicken and the egg isn't like a bar that, we have to approve their liquor licenses, and we can not approve them if they don't do things properly. I know Mark's tried very hard to resolve some of these issues, and I'm just thinking, Rob, you say you're looking at it with a new eye, and I think sometimes that really helps. And the idea maybe, because I know we had some issues just recently with the deliveries coming really early in the morning before 7. I've spent hours talking with Sherry and a lot of people of ways we could try to avoid some of the problems that the deliveries cause. And we talked about, well, if they delivered really early in the morning before 6 o'clock, for example, if they did it on Bay Avenue, there would be no residences that would be bothered, and they would be out of touch. So basically,
I'd be more than
there's a
happy
reason that didn't work, but we're still thinking.
Happy to take. I mean, I know any comments, any things that come up, you address them. I mean, without somebody, making it, we address them one at a time as business owners and respect to the residents, and we alter it and we change it. It's real simple. It's not. I think we're, and I'm willing to do any of that, even if I have to with somebody once a week until we knock them all out. I don't feel like, I think everything is easily adjusted to make sure everybody's okay. I mean, there's a fine line when eventually you just complain about everything, but all these things are important, noise and stuff like that. I wouldn't want that if I lived there. So that's an easy fix. So I'm willing to do anything we have to do to take care of that.
That would be wonderful. That'd be great.
Nancy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Craig Berkland here. I know I look like Tatiana Rosette, but that's my wife.
I know who you are.
So I'm on 215 Second Street. My basic question is,
Well, tell you what, let me swear you in first.
Sure.
I also, Mr. Burris has had his hand raised
Okay.
this whole time. Also, if we can go in order, that would be great. So I'm going to unmute you, Bill.
Okay.
Yeah, let me swear in Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett? I already swore you in. Never, go ahead.
Yeah. I have two comments. You've done a lot of research with respect to the ordinances. And other than liquor establishment, you can't find any ordinance that sets hours of operation for a business. So I don't believe that the ordinances in Beach Haven contain anything for that. I don't believe there's any different parking or parking requirement between a candy store and a restaurant. They both have the same parking requirement because our parking ordinances were changed maybe in 2012. That's my two comments. Thank you.
Okay. Did you want to speak now? I'm sorry. I forget what your first name was.
Craig Berkland.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to swear you in, sir. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, assuming you're going to testify.
I do.
Yeah, and your name and address.
Craig Berkland, 215 Second Street. So my only comment is that twice on this meeting, the land use board, some member of the LUB has mentioned that they don't have any responsibility for code enforcement. My concern is the LUB or the council, whoever it may be, makes decisions, but then there's no code enforcement of the rules that are on the books. So, for example, the tractor trailers that show up on Second Street at 7 a.m. and run for an hour while they unload, my understanding, and this is just my understanding, it could be wrong, that technically speaking, they should be on 3rd Street. And I have no ill feelings towards the people on 3rd Street, don't get me wrong, but it's just an example of, should we make sure, whatever the decision is today and other decisions in the future, that the codes and the rules that apply are enforced?
Could I just say something? I'm not sure if that's correct that the trucks have to load on 3rd Street, but we can certainly look into that, but I've never seen anything specific to that. Also, to be perfectly truthful, we have a code enforcement person who I think was on this meeting earlier anyway, and he's been doing a wonderful job, and I know he's been down to the chicken and the egg numerous times regarding some of these issues I'm talking about. So it's not like these issues are being ignored. I have to say we're very short-staffed in the police force right now. I think during the COVID, they canceled the police academy. We normally have 30 special officers in the summer to help with enforcement. We only were able to hire 10. We recently, this past week, were able to get a couple more. So we're terribly short-staffed, and you can imagine there's a lot more issues going on at the moment. We're working on all these things. The best way that we can handle this, I think, is if Rob LaScala and the people at the CHAG, try to do as much enforcement as they can. For example, there is an ordinance that said, and I looked into this, Greg, because of your wife asked me, we have an ordinance that says that cars aren't allowed to idle. And I mean, that's kind of hard to enforce. I mean, I can call the code enforcement person and say, hey, there's a car idling in front of my house. By the time he gets there, the car might have moved. And people do that. I think maybe it's up to us to go out and say to some of these people, hey, you know, turn your engine off. That's illegal. You're polluting our environment. It's just, the other-
I've seen.
Content does do that, and I discourage her, because I'm like, don't ruin your mental health by worrying about that.
I
But
know.
I think my point is, and that was the same thing, you know, we renovated our house 5-6 years ago, as you know, and the inspectors were all over us. The inspectors were checking the foundation, the insulation, the framing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I feel it's sort of like, why were we the only ones following the rules? We should have just done what we wanted to do and then apologize after the fact. Right? So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to, I just think the LUB shouldn't punt the code enforcement issue to someone else, because that has to go hand in hand.
Well, you have to realize that the land use board are volunteers. They really don't have the authority to go around and code enforce it. I mean, it's really the town's responsibility. Maybe what we need is an extra code enforcement person in the summer to help with some of these issues. And I'll suggest that to our manager and see what we can do.
All right, no, just, thank you.
Colleen, anybody else?
Jeanette, do you want to speak? Hold on, Jeanette, you're muted. Jeanette, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I'd like to
Unmute.
There you go.
There you
Okay.
go.
Jeanette Lloyd, and I'm in charge. I'm the chairperson for historic preservation, and I'm glad that all these issues are coming to light right now. I know I get, because it butts up right into the historic district, especially 2nd and 3rd Street. I must get about 6 to 8 phone calls every summer about some of the offenses. So let me just clarify some of them. Number one, that access road in back of your buildings is a fire access road. It was always there because of us. One of the Spragues had their paint shop there. And just through the years, it's been lost in everything. Mark came ahead and he put all that stuff in the back. That's not allowed, but that's beside the point. I also get a lot of complaints about not having the right kind of fan with your frying food, because when the wind blows west, you smell the chicken and everything for about 4 blocks, and we get a lot of complaints about that. The third thing is that it used to be that they were eating and drinking, making love, and doing everything, waiting for the Chegg to open and get their food. And that seems to have quieted down. The problem that I have is poor 2nd Street. They get slammed big time. And I really feel sorry, because there's nothing that I can think of or anything that I can do. Because let's admit it, there is no parking on that area. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette.
I'd like to speak too, if I could. Would you swear me in, please?
Yes. You swear from the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do. And
And
I'll
your
be
name,
a
please.
self-proclaimed expert on 2nd Street.
Well, your name and address. Your name and
Having lived
address.
there for 25 years.
Excuse me, your name and address.
John Wachter, 219 2nd Street.
Thank you.
And having lived on 2nd Street for 25 years and watched the chicken or the egg really flourish and do a great job. I give a lot of credit to Mark. It's been incredible, but we have been through an awful lot. And today, to consider further expansion or increased business there is just, to me, it's absolutely terrifying, because the safety concerns with the trucks, the number of people, the parking. I mean, many times I have to park blocks away. I park at Murphy's and walk to my home because there's no parking. And that's a great consideration of how well you've done. But at the same time, we've been through a lot, and Mark has worked with us. I'll give you credit, Mark, you know, as far as cleaning up, and you've done a great job and tried your best. But to consider further expansion in these variances, I don't think it's in the best interest of our neighborhood.
I don't, the word expansion is, it's really not the case at all. And that word is, I don't know, like where that word's coming from, because it's not an expansion. It's just, it's better operation of a place that is, you know, not being operated to help. I think everybody's missing this point here, like even in the neighbors, and I respect you guys' homes and the value and everything that's going on. And I think it's going to be a better service than, it's not an expansion, it's a better operation, which leads with better things in place, which means that with a better well-oiled machine of a machine that's been doing great for 30 years. I mean, these are the backbones of your guys' communities. I mean, I don't know, I forget as an owner or not. I mean, I just, you know, I don't know other than that, but I think using the word expansion is a bad, and no disrespect, thanks for your comments, but like, I don't, it's not an expansion. It's going to be a better run, I'm telling you.
All right, as a business person also, efficiency creates.
It's not always about the money. If it was always about the money, I wouldn't be dumping the amount of money. I mean, I could give you what I'm spending to do this. It's not, there's no return on it. Trust me when I tell you, I'm spending a ton of money to better efficient the business, because that's how I run my stores, and that's it. And
eradicate the chicken smell?
Sorry?
No, I didn't say anything. I said efficiency builds volume.
Efficiency what?
Builds volume.
It doesn't. It doesn't really. Not at this point. What more volume can we do? We're on a 3-hour wait as it is. Like, what more volume am I doing? We're not doing any more volume. We're gonna run it better, period. And I'll stand by that as far as I can say, and that's why I'm doing it. It's not about the dollar amount. I mean, I already invested. You can look at a public record what I paid for it. Like what it's the money's. It's not just about money. It's about running a store correctly. At this point, like Mark and his brother did an unbelievable job running the place. It's not the. That's not,
I don't want to. I'm sorry to cut you off, guys, but as far as the efficiency thing goes and volume, when I first met Rob, he watched the way we were doing things, and what he saw was employees that were stressed out because we had an incredible amount of volume coming in, and he said there's a more efficient way to do this, and really love to see him have the opportunity to see this thing through fruition, because it should make everybody's lives better. And I don't mean it should make everyone around us a little bit better. As far as our efficiency, our stress factor, the customer stress factor, and yes, John, will it result in a higher volume? I don't know, but we haven't calculated that. That wasn't the concern here. The concern was being more efficient, being less stressful, and trying to keep everybody at a more even keel instead of being 100% all the time.
Mark, I've even offered some solutions to loading zones during certain receiving hours. I've seen it in Cape May. Something hopefully the town will consider. And having, you know, what I do, I have people only one truck at a time that can do liquor. So when they come in, one is there, the other one, if there's somebody there, they have to leave, they can't wait. And, you know, there's other opportunities to find better ways. And I hope that together that can be done. You know, I'm all about Beach Haven. I'm all about business. I'm a business person, but I live there, and I've lived, you know, a lot of struggles. What can I say? But thank you for allowing me to comment, and thank you, John Harvey. I thought you did a great job, and Craig as well. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, I mean, I think the board understands all the problems that Second Street has had, but do you have any suggestions of what they could do to improve the situation?
Well, we had talked about, I mentioned it to Nancy. In Cape May, they have a loading zone where they take like 4 parking spots, which is right on the curb line, and no one's allowed to park there. I don't know how it will if it would really work in Beach Haven or
You mean
not.
they're not allowed to park there? Nobody's allowed to
From
park there
7
but
to
trucks?
12. From
What?
7 to 12. From 7 to 12. And that's when everyone comes and unloads, and one truck at a time, especially larger trucks, which really seemed to work. Or the unloading on Bay Avenue, which I know Mr. Liscalo already said he started to do, which I think is a great idea. That doesn't affect the residential as well.
So the issue is, since they're open 24/7, there are always cars in front. So the trucks can never pull on Bay Avenue to unload because there are always people eating there because they're open all the time.
Yeah. I imagine you can get a smaller truck, a bread truck in or something like that, which obviously they're doing, so. But
I did broach the idea on Second Street of being able to pull the trucks in the morning with Sherry also. And we talked about that, and we talked about Bay Avenue. There was some reason I think that got nixed. I can't remember exactly what it was, but my feeling is you like in Philadelphia, you can't park at certain times when there's increased traffic or when they're sweeping streets. We could certainly put a sign up somewhere that says no parking from 6 a.m. till noon on this area where the trucks could pull in. Most people are on the beach up till noon. So you don't have, I don't think Bay Avenue or some of these side streets that are close to restaurants are as crowded then. So that would be an issue. The trucks are supposed to pull up close to Bay Avenue so they don't overhang in the residential area. That's another factor. And I know I've seen 2 trucks stacked up there. So, or sometimes, 2, sometimes even 3. So I know it's pretty bad. I have, as I say, I have worked on it with Sherry. We haven't gotten very, always to be a reason why you can't do something. And it's mind boggling to me, but we'll keep working on it.
Okay. All right. Well,
Nancy is correct here. Just to be
go
clear,
ahead.
it's not about the trucks blocking the traffic on Second Street, because there's not much traffic on Second Street at 7 a.m. It's the fact that they leave the trucks running with the refrigeration unit running, and it's the noise. And
Well, by law, they have to they have to have those reefers running. In other words, because if they turn the refrigeration off in the truck, the public health department says that could spoil the food. They don't have to have the truck engine on though.
So
I
they-
know, that's a huge problem.
Well, it's about who enforces better, right? What code are we enforcing first, right? Like,
Well,
Health safety.
right.
Do they get, they probably don't get deliveries like 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning, right?
no, they're not allowed to get a delivery till after 7
In the morning.
in the morning.
I mean, could they do something like put out cones, orange cones, and block off places so the trucks could pull in?
I think if they could pull on Bay Avenue, that would save all the residents that noise, the reefer noise and everything. If, if they do it between, even if you changed it to between 6 and something on Bay Avenue, it would relieve the neighbors. I mean, they would have to load through the front of the chain, not through the alley, but it would be a great relief, I think, to the neighbors. But I think there was some reason, and I can't make, Tom, I'm looking at you, but maybe you remember what the reason was. I don't, that they didn't say that was going to work. I think Sherry brought it up with Jim.
I'm not sure.
We
I
can
know
look into it again.
Part-
To me, it makes total sense.
Well, I mean, it's getting late. I know everybody's getting tired. We could talk about this till tomorrow morning. Seems obvious that you and Sherry and Tom and everybody else in town, in council, have discussed this situation on Second Street. But I just can't believe there's nothing that can be done to keep these trucks off of Second Street and Third Street.
Well, maybe Rob Lascala can work with me and Mark as well and some of the other neighbors there, maybe we can come up with a solution. I do think new eyes and somebody coming in that's run a business with a lot of restaurants might have better ideas than I do. And maybe we can make it better, hopefully.
It's got to get better.
I know. I mean, the problem is the Chick has been so successful that it really outgrew its space. And you said that, I mean, it's such a successful restaurant that it really needs a bigger space with more parking and all that stuff. But
they should buy Fred's Diner.
Yeah.
Move there.
Not they didn't call me.
There you go. Spend some more money.
All right, well, let's get back to this application. All these other issues
Sorry.
you're going to have to deal with, Nancy. I guess I'll have is there anybody else in the public that wants to speak?
Bonnie, this is John Harvey. Can I make one more comment? I got cut off earlier after Rob's comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I mean, my fears were going down the same way we went down the parking problem, with picking off a piece at a time, like the delivery trucks and stuff. And, you know, I'm going to go, I mean, you got people on your board that have owned their own businesses, Ken, myself, you got John Wachter's, Murphy's. And I'm just, you know, for me, and I absolutely, Rob, appreciate that your primary goal is not to make more money. But I go with what John said, is that the more efficient you can be, and if Ken is more efficient at the bagel place or the shake, or the shack, he's going to do more business. And so, you know, I think it's a bit disingenuous to write off this. And I'm going to go back to what his attorney said right in the beginning. And he said two things: increased efficiency and increased business. And so we can start twisting how much of which, but this is going to compound an already existing problem that we know that goes into parking, traffic, and everything else. So, you know, before we go down the path of colors and whether it's this parking truck or that parking truck, I think this core issue here, and I think you said it, Nancy, is this business has outgrown itself, and it's probably at 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag right now. And the question is, at what point do you say, okay, we can't allow that business to take any more away from the public in order to grow it, whether it's its own efficiency or, I believe, also business growth.
Thanks, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other comments? Colleen?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion. Close.
To close this to the public.
Got it. Second.
Don, that was you?
Got it.
Tom was the first, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, are there any more comments from the board? Do you have any more questions or concerns about this application for takeout?
If I could, real quick, this is Scott. I'd like to make one comment to the owners. A neighborly thing you could consider doing, and this is just a suggestion, is take a couple employees from the early shift and have them police the neighborhood for Chegg-related garbage. It might alleviate some of the immediate residents' concerns, and it would be a nice gesture. Just a suggestion.
Scott, if I may, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but we do that, and it may be that we just don't do it enough. Maybe we could, because I do have one guy that spends an hour and a half, 2 hours every morning going from block to block. Maybe we need 2 guys, you know, maybe we need more, or maybe when the trash is there, that's when people see it, and then they don't see it after it's been cleaned. We really, in all honesty, we do make a really big effort to try and police the neighborhood for garbage, but I'm sure we could do a better job.
Okay.
Could I say something, one thing? You know, we have a vote coming up on this, and I know that you want to get moving on this project, but if we could delay this a month, I hate and maybe try to come up with some answers to the problem. I mean, I'm in a quandary because I do think, as Penny said, it will make it more efficient there, and it'll decrease the crowds on the sidewalk. But I also agree with John and the other people on 2nd Street that by making it more efficient, you are probably going to increase the business somewhat. And that is a concern because it is, I live on the other end of Second Street and I see it and I know how distressing it is. And it's been distressing for a long time, people that live in that neighborhood. If we could maybe try to come up with some solutions of how we can deal with some of these problems before we have I don't, if you disagree with me, that's fine, but I just thought that might make it more easier to vote.
So you're making a suggestion this application be carried for another month?
I am, but I think that's pretty much up to the board and the owners. And I'm just thinking that at this point it's going to be a very close vote. I have no idea how the vote is going to end up, but I think if they want to get the approval to do this, they might have a better chance if we could address some of these issues and see if we can come up with a decent solution beforehand. That's just my thought.
This is Scott. What of the main issues we're talking about, what can really get resolved in a month? I don't think this will help. I think we'll be right back where we are a month from now, talk about the same things with no changes.
I think if I could just sum up a little bit too, based upon the public's comments, I think a lot of the problems that are coming up are Beach Haven problems. They're not specific to the chicken or the egg. And you have a permitted use here. This is the business district where there's a restaurant. It's a permitted use. The building exists and it's some commercial use going to go in there. There's been talk about the chicken or the egg outgrowing itself. But what they're trying to do here now is expand the area of their restaurant without increasing the seating to try to alleviate that problem and to allow a takeout area and more efficiently run the business. In my opinion, there's nothing that's going to be able to be solved in a month with respect to deliveries and parking. As we've said repeatedly, the parking is based on the floor area. No matter what business is in there, the parking requirement is not going to change. So I think we're just losing focus on what the application at hand is. We're talking about more problems that are borough-wide, where here you just have a business, sure it's successful, and that's why they're doing this, is to try to gain more area to better accommodate the volume that they have. So that's all I have to add.
Penny, I agree with you, Jane.
Mr. Rabin, if you don't mind, if the board does approve this tonight, your client is agreeing that post-COVID to the limitation on hours to 11 to 10 p.m. Is that correct? That would be, if the board approves it, that would be part of my resolution, that post-COVID, the hours would be 11 a.m. until 10 p.m. for the takeout.
That's correct. Rob,
Okay.
that was what you agreed to, correct?
Rob, you're muted.
He keeps muting me, but all right, I just lost something. Anyway, because I would mute myself too, but.
Well, yeah, but I just wanted to confirm, Rob, that that was what you agreed to, hours of 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. for the
Yes,
takeout.
for the takeout, yes, 100%.
Okay.
And is that, would there be a potential you'd want to have the takeout open earlier during the breakfast crowds, or 11 o'clock is okay?
Mark, what was our decision on that?
Well, I didn't know that was going to be a decision we'd have to
I
make.
don't know, is breakfast a concern?
If you're really talking about max volume, it's lunchtime and dinner time. That's when that takeout is really needed. If you put a gun to my head and said you need to decide right now, sure, yeah, 11's fine. But the reality is our business is built upon serving every meal, and that means.
If I'm going to back up what I'm trying to say, and that is not that I'm not doing this for the sole reason to make money, more money. Obviously, every businessman wants to make money, but the nighttime would be the objective, and I could agree that we won't open up past 10 o'clock. I'm perfectly fine with that. Whether or not we make a couple eggs in the morning, more on the takeout side, where bagel shops, cinnamon bun, blaze, everybody's open on your island. You're like, I don't know if that really makes a big concern if we open at 8 as opposed to 11. but I could agree for the nighttime. I would think that would be more of the
You've got to
objection.
decide, if we're going to vote on this, you've got to decide some hours for this takeout. You
Is
can't-
anybody objecting to an 8 o'clock I mean, a morning takeout? I mean, I never thought that was a problem. I thought more so that the closing was the problem. I mean, Mark, I mean, you want to agree to like 10, 11 o'clock opening?
Again, if the opening hours are a problem, then I think it's more crucial to worry about the lunch and the dinner. You know, that's when it's going to really help us out. But I frankly don't. The volume of breakfast takeout that we're doing is not such that it would majorly impact the community. I don't think it's going to have a giant bearing. Therefore, I would, me personally, if I'm speaking for myself, I would want to reserve that right to be able to be open during breakfast, because it's part of our business. It's part of our business model.
Bob, Bob, I could speak for, I think it was you, Bob, that said something about the hours of operation. Are you opposed to I mean, isn't the closing more important, or am I misreading this?
If you're asking me, I'm just trying to clarify for the resolution. If the board adopts this tonight,
Yeah.
I want to make sure whatever resolution I write up, it contains hours. There was testimony earlier about hours of
I
operation for
apologize.
takeout.
No, I understand. I just had to direct it to you because you asked. But,
Do any of the board members have concerns with 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. for the takeout?
No, I don't.
I don't.
I don't. I don't.
No.
Okay, so then we would ask for that. But agree to the 10 o'clock closing at night.
Right.
And that's post-COVID, so we're all clear on that. So that's your testimony and that's your representation. After, during this time, obviously, all bets are off. After the COVID crisis is over, to be bound by these hours until you come back before the board.
Yes.
Assuming the board accepts your presentation. And
Yes, that's acceptable.
All right. So we have a suggestion for carrying. I don't know if anybody is for that. Do I have anybody else that thinks that's a good idea? Okay. Well, nobody thinks that's a good idea, so I suppose that means you're all ready to vote on this application.
We also have to conclude the signs. Remember?
The signs.
Yeah, without the sign thing.
Awning.
But
I'm willing to do the sign any way that you guys want to do for your better of your thing. I will do any sign you want. Okay?
Frank,
And pay for it.
it's going to
Do
be
everything.
decided before the resolution if the application passes.
Yes, I'm willing to do whatever you like for me to do with the sign.
All right. Do I have a
Are
motion?
we talking about the signs and the facade?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm open to any I'm fine with that. I'm open, anything you like, I will do.
Okay. Did you
So
guys-
how's that going to be handled? If he's open, is it going to be up to Frank? Was he going to come to a subcommittee for an approval, or how's that going
Isn't
to
that
work?
like a township approval when you go to isn't it you have work like, I don't know if I'm using the right word, township or whatever you're considered, but I mean, my past experiences, you go to you get the things signed off when you present the plans from as far as finishes, colors and schemes, right?
Right.
When
So
that
colors are
signed
not-
off on a town, if this thing ever ends, that we could actually walk into a building and look at somebody, then we can sign off on it.
Well, I
The
think,
colors aren't historical
Well-
committee?
Nick, you're a sign man.
Yes,
I think you get the feeling about what we don't want.
yes. Typically, if we could allow for the professional review, and of course, the professionals then could submit that back to you guys prior to a permit being issued. So we could submit to the professionals, and the professionals could at least have you guys look at it prior to
Right.
us moving forward.
And then the professionals can approve it.
Yes, and then, like I said, as long as this evening I have the square footage that's allowed, that we're allowed to have 2 signs, that the awnings are allowed, though we can always agree that the colors are still up in the air and the exact design is up in the air.
Okay.
And I guess, Bonnie, I think it's important that they allow us to do that as part of the resolution, that they have agreed that we have that input.
Use me as your new scope for signs. How about that?
Yeah,
Okay?
all right.
I've been used for a lot of things, so you might as well use me for that.
Yeah. Bob,
Use me.
you've got all this
I'm fine
down to
with
put in the resolution?
Yeah, it's going to be a long resolution, but yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
State your name too when you do it, please, just so I can write it down.
Joe Pisano makes a motion to approve.
Right, thank you.
Kotaransky, second.
Thank you.
Mayor Davis.
I'm going to just, I have to just make a statement. I'm very mixed about this, particularly when I'm told by the lawyer that it's really Beach Haven's problem, and it is a problem. And as mayor, I feel that I have to vote no, because I don't see how we can deal with the problems that exist, because I think this is an expansion of the business, even though I do think it would decrease some of the crowd, but I have to vote no, sorry.
Mr. Cactus?
I think the business volume will increase. I also think that they're expanding the kitchen, which makes an indication to me that the business volume is going to be increasing. I think they have too many issues with regard to the restaurant today to solve first, so I vote no.
Mr. Allen?
Being in there last summer, I understand the need for another takeout portion. You know, I don't think I've sat down and eaten in there in a long time because it is so busy. We usually get takeout. But I don't think the underlying problems can be ignored as far as loading and parking. And in this instance, even though I see the added benefit of it, you know, I'm going to also back up what Nancy has to say, and I have to vote no on this until we can figure out a better way to work within the neighborhood and the scope of the town before we can proceed with something like this.
Mr. Stevens?
I also will vote no. I think the public has brought up a lot of questions that really need to be answered, and we've had some verbiage tonight, but I think we really need to answer the questions before we could act on this favorably. I vote no.
Mr. Pisano?
Well, I made the motion to approve, so I would vote yes. And I don't think that any business performance should be punished. I think business performance should be rewarded. I think it's extraordinary that this particular business, although it's very successful, my daughter, who's 42 years old, was the first receptionist at that business. So I know it personally when it first started. But they've been successful, and I think that if they want to take some traffic off the street, if they want to spend their money to alleviate congestion during a pandemic, I have to clap my hands and reward them because they're taking an extraordinary step. If their business happens to improve, so be it. They're good business people. This is America, and they should be rewarded. So I vote yes, yes, yes.
Mr. Meadow?
Listening to if by voting no and not going forward with their expansion, by them improving themselves, we're still going to be stuck with the same crowded sidewalks. They're not going to have to work with us. But I really think if we vote yes on this, they will try to make the town better. They want to make the town better. So I'm a yes.
Mr. Muha?
I have to agree with Tom. I was going to say virtually the same thing. I think that if we vote no on this, nothing's going to change. There's no reason to change. If we say yes and we make sure that they work with us, and address the concerns of the neighborhood, because frankly, that's my, I'm going to vote yes, but if I were to vote no, my concern was with the neighborhood. And I think we can better impact the neighborhood by voting yes and have a little bit of, I don't want to say control, but have some suggestions.
So your vote was yes, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Herensky.
I vote yes, and I agree with all the previous yes comments. And I think the onus is on those of us that are responsible for the borough operations and the borough structure to come up with a method to improve the delivery trucks. I believe the businesses will work with us if we do so. But I think the onus is on us to suggest a method to improve it.
Mrs. Lenhard?
I'm going to vote yes also. I do agree that these problems have existed, and I do feel that Mr. La Scala is sincere in trying to improve the situation there. I do think that a lot of these problems have existed for a very long time, and the town has not done anything about it. So the town needs to get their act together and solve this problem on 2nd Street one way or the other. And I do feel that Mr. La Scala seems to be agreeable to doing that. So I'm voting yes.
This application was approved.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, that's it for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Heck
So
yeah.
moved.
All done.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
night.
you.